Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Mike in the Asylum with your hosts, Sydney Cisneros,
Jesse Netto,
Liam Grant,
and Ron Van Buskirk.
Join us tonight as we talk about some of our favorite horror movies and have a little round table about them. Tonight we are going to be discussing 2016's The Void. This movie was suggested to us last week by Jesse, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to him.
Yes, I decided that we had our fill of witches and trolls, so we needed a few eldritch horrors from beyond the veil.
And I'm really looking forward to finding more movies like that.
Well, we were not going to find that many.
No.
So. This was a 2016 movie, as I believe he said, and the directors were, Steven Kostanski and Jeremy Gillespie. Okay, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah, and so I first, how do we want to, just like, little first impressions?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Go ahead and
So
start.
I first saw this on Netflix. I didn't see it when it came out because I don't believe it came to theaters.
No, it was straight to Netflix.
So that was a shame, and I loved it because I have a big hankering for a Lovecraft fix that nothing in this world itches for some reason. Like
nobody wants to touch it.
Yeah, and I don't understand why. Rod's gonna launch it. But anyway, but yes, it was just like I was so excited because I heard that the movie had great practical effects, and it did. And it was basically I saw this quote, and I like the quote. It's the best John Carpenter movie he never made, and I very much agree with that.
I could see that.
It's kind of like a blend of Precinct 13 and The Thing.
It had a lot. It had a lot of classic stuff in it. I was really happy to see.
Moving on to Liam.
Oh hey, so it was like I saw this movie when I was like a senior in high school. The cult members and their robes looked so cool. When I was scrolling through, I think Kotaku or something, and they were like, "Oh, here's the list of movies that are coming out that you need to see." And I saw The Void, and I was like, "Oh, that looks so cool." So went to go see it, and now fourth viewing in.
Heck
I
yeah.
still love this film so much.
Can I take this moment to praise the poster? Because the poster is like just a plain white background, a triangle, and tentacles coming out of the triangle.
Dude, the
it's
artwork
really awesome.
is so amazing in this movie. But yeah, I have a delightful time with this movie every time I watch it. And I'll pass it on to Ron.
Okay. Me, personally, is one of the best Hellraiser movies I've ever seen.
Yes, it was. They even homage it at one scene.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, sometimes I have a struggle with these kind of movies, the Lovecraft movies, mainly just because there's
all five
a lot.
Of them.
Yeah,
And all five of them, and three of them are terrible.
or just the sort of genre of like not knowing things, and like it's up for debate. Like no one's going to be right or wrong here because there's going to be a lot of things that we just didn't know, and so I think that's kind of where I'm at. I did like this movie. It's definitely a movie I will continuously revisiting. It'll definitely be in my library. Yeah, I'll pass it on to Sid.
Right. So, this is actually kind of weird because I knew nothing about this movie before I watched it. I've heard of it. There was another podcast I listened to where one of the members on that mentioned watching The Void when it first came out, and he kind of gave a very, very, very brief, like, plot summary of it, and it sounded interesting, so it just went on that like ever expanding list of movies I might watch someday. So when it was brought up for us to watch this week, I was really excited. I did really like this movie. I've always been a huge fan of Lovecraftian cosmic horror.
I redeemed myself from Raw.
Yeah.
Even though you're wrong about that movie, but
That was the most passive aggressive I've ever heard you say.
But like. And it's kind of a weird thing because, you know, I've known a lot of people in my life who they go outside in the middle of nowhere on a nice dark night and they look up and they see all the stars and it actually does frighten them. Like, they actually hate that. I love that feeling of being small. I love looking at the vast ocean. I love looking at the sky, and I love feeling like nothing matters.
You must very much love Lovecraft.
I do. That's why I love Lovecraft so much. Just the infinite void of unknowns and...
where we suck and we're all gonna die.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's also exciting, you know, for the same reason why like more optimistic sci-fi like Star Trek is fun. That vast unknown of exploration. It's kind of like two sides of the same coin kind of thing, I guess. But I'm going to keep rambling on, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Jesse. We will go ahead and get started with the synopsis.
Alrighty. So, spoilers as always. Like
Always.
we're still starting out, so that's an important factor to notice.
Heavy spoilers.
How we do this is we go through the plot of the movie, and we don't leave things out. So.
You had a week to watch it.
Good times. Now, the movie begins in this little house, and the first thing we see is a pair of dead legs, so we know we're in for a good time. There's blood pooling everywhere, and we slowly pan in on a door with a black triangle that looks like it was painted there, and we don't know what that's about, and we kind of never really know.
That was Bob Ross.
Bob Ross.
Oh, he went crazy.
Okay, all right.
He had too many little happy clouds.
Since we're starting off with the triangle, this is something I have to bring up. I really like how they handled with the vast unknown by making it simple, just a triangle, something we could easily
Not
understand.
something like super complicated.
But it's still kind of threatening because the paint's all drippy and it's black. However,
oh,
no, this isn't even a bad thing. This is just a weird personal thing.
It's just the Illuminati.
I love Gravity Falls.
Oh, okay.
And so all I could think of when I saw this, I don't know how many of you guys have seen it.
I have.
But all I could think of every time I saw the triangle is, oh, Bill's watching.
It all makes sense.
It
now.
all makes sense.
And
it does
I
kind of
gotta
have, it
watch
kind of
that.
does have the same feeling as like a particularly messed up
It
episode.
kind of does.
But anyway,
so
which is a praise, I should say.
we hear a little bit of screaming, and then two people run out of this little house. One gets a little far away. Another one, a girl, gets a little far away, but then two dudes show up behind her out of the house and shoot her.
Takes a
She
12
falls
gauge
down,
to the back.
It's a good time. And so they very casually kind of walk out. It's clear that this isn't really new to them, and we don't know why they did this or what was going on. And they look after the guy and says, "Oh, he won't get far, and we'll get him." These characters are called the Father and the Son, and that's how we'll be referring to them. And we're not being assholes. That's their actual names.
They're not referred to as anything else.
And so the girl who got shot in the back is still like crawling and trying to run away, and the father just goes and grabs a can of gas and gives it to the son to just dump on her, and then he gets a little cigarette and tosses it on her. It's a good time. Sets her on fire. She
The
dies.
most hilarious burned to death scene I've ever seen.
He took some extra puffs on that cigarette. Just
Oh yeah, he specifically was like wanting to get it hot enough.
Well,
He
and-
didn't want to be wasteful, you know.
And while the son obviously like he doesn't seem like he likes what's going on,
Oh, yeah.
the father does seem to get a little tinge of satisfaction.
The son's a little hesitant, and that's something that will continue with his character throughout the movie.
Yes.
To let you know that they're not just like sadistic, crazy people. So then we cut to our main character. We're going to call him Carter because that's his name. He's a cop, and so he's like, having a little bit of banter with dispatch and stuff. And
His
then,
shift's almost over.
yeah, and that dude that got away stumbles out in front of him, and he initially thinks, oh, it's some drunk kid, like, and then he goes out and sees, oh, he's covered in blood. Okay, 10-4, we need ambulance. Oh God, bad things are happening. And
I need a dog.
I would just like to take this moment to hone in on any shot that is not. They're going to go to a hospital. Any shot that is not set in that hospital is like pitch black. There are like very few street lights or anything.
You
There's
don't
no
see
city.
any cars.
It's just like out in the middle of nowhere with just like the dark sky and the dark trees, and it really creates a good atmosphere in my opinion.
Yeah, I love those shots of like pitch black, nowhere in the stars.
and I feel, and I could be jumping the shark on this one. Like he was originally going to take them to their local hospital. But it
He was
seems
going.
like,
No, he was going to take them to a other hospital.
Oh, okay.
Because he didn't want to go to the local hospital.
That was the local hospital.
Because you see, he's kind of
Okay.
antsy about it, and we'll learn why later. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
can tell it now.
I think they
All right,
mentioned
go ahead.
something about how they're about to close down.
Right,
There
they're
was a
about
big-
to close.
There was a big fire. Yeah.
and so they're shifting everything over.
But
it
there's
does have
another reason.
It does have a bit of a staff still that are just like lingering while
The
things are
hospital
waiting
has,
to be
like,
moved.
one doctor.
Right.
So
So he pulls in, gets in, and the doctor shows up, and this is where we meet Allison? Yes, Allison.
Yep.
And the reason he was antsy about this, we got away a little bit of tension between them because they're, are they divorced?
They're divorced.
Okay, just checking.
I didn't think
They're-
they were.
I-
They might not have been yet.
I think
Yeah.
they might just be separated.
There's something with them. We find out that they were married, but there's something off.
Their stuff
there-
is already split up.
There's issues between
issues.
them.
Yeah, you could fit. You can cut the tension.
Like, you can tell both of them are kind of nervous around
Yeah.
each other. It's the first time they've probably been near each other like this much for a long time.
And that might have been another reason why you didn't want to go to that hospital in the first place.
Right.
So-
But anyway, so yes, they wheel the... Well, oh, God, what was his name? James?
James.
That meth character that ran
Dust
away.
Head.
Yeah, his name is
Dust
James.
Head.
And what happens immediately after this? We kind of introduced to the
right at that.
characters.
Yeah, we start getting more characters. We got the Cliff, who seems to be their only patient.
Yep, he's just chilling, and he's being annoyed by
Knives Chow.
I was going to say Kim, but yes,
it is.
Kim the intern, the worst intern known to man.
who was Knives Chow and Scott Pilgrim.
She was literally just Aubrey Plaza's character from Parks and Rec. It was kind of hilarious.
Like she's an intern. She clearly doesn't give a shit or know that much about all this, and she has no one else to talk to, so she's talking to Cliff.
She's an intern. She doesn't get paid. Why is she working this late?
I loved how she was just like trying to gross him out. I was like, "Hey, degloving, check this out." It's like, if you know what that is, audience, you know, and if you don't look it up. It's a bad time.
Look it up, kids.
So who else? Beverly is the nurse one of the nurses on duty, who will become important later. And we are also introduced to Dr. Powell, who seems like to be a very level-headed sort of man, who's like, "Oh, hello, call him a boy."
He seems almost boring at first, so yeah.
Almost Malcolm McDowell.
Also in the waiting room is a grandfather and what's her name?
Ben, and his granddaughter's Maggie,
who is pregnant, and they're in the waiting room because she's close to having it.
But you forgot another person. Hans.
Who's Hans?
Hans shows up.
He was kind of in this movie.
He was like, "Holy shit, the trolls are breaking
The
into wherever we are."
But,
New Jersey or something.
You are confusing our listeners.
You know who the real troll is? Man.
He just wanted to do
I
the
hate
voice.
you so much.
He just wanted to, you know it.
The
Anyway,
joke's never going to die.
the scene that Jesse just brought up, where you first introduced to the Ben and Maggie, it's worth mentioning, at least for me personally, that it seems like there's a little bit of weird tension between Carter and Maggie and Ben as well.
I would also like to mention that I thought the actors did a great job, but I don't know what was going on with Ben. I don't know.
I think he was just old man. I honestly, he felt just super normal.
I wish I had written some of his lines, because some of his lines really felt like he wasn't in a we're being murdered sort of way. It was in a you have to do this.
Well, no, because I think he's like protective father. His daughter going through a really traumatic labor is a little more important than everything else.
All right, rescinded.
Yeah.
Because
the cults are a threat, but the immediate threat is right here, at least in his eyes.
Which happens later.
Spoilers. Happens later.
There's a cult. So what?
They all should know this.
Have we seen? Have any of the cultists shown up? Like, were they watching the fire?
No. When they burned the girl at the farm,
there's some dude in the tree line. In this like Ku Klux Klan ish outfit with like.
It's
I didn't even see him right there.
Yeah.
There's a black triangle. Yeah, the black triangle shows up again. It's on its face.
So we know something spooky.
Spooky is happening.
And so after this, there's a little scene with Kim and Beverly where Beverly is giving her shit for not doing anything and packing up because they're trying to get everything to like the new hospital because this one burned down. We talked about that a little before. What happens after this?
Okay,
I don't think it's immediately.
Carter is kind of like talking about the James,
and like it's very awkward. There's coffee.
Yes, and then he breaks the ice by looking at his shirt and saying, "Oh God, the guy bled on me." So he's in the office
after they find out he was a meth head because he's like, "Oh, needles, bad times."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so he goes to wash himself off, and then he's walking down the hallway.
Is this when he hears a sound?
Yeah, he hears a sound, and he just like peeks into the room. This is where Cliff was, and Beverly is standing over him, and everything seems fine, except there's a scalpel in his face.
No, it's not a scalpel. It's even worse.
It's scissors in his eye, and it's like, oh, that's not that Beverly. Why? That's rude.
Then Beverly turns around,
and she doesn't have a face.
She's been peeling off her skin. She's constantly saying, "This isn't my face. This isn't my face. This isn't my face."
And then he's like, "Beverly, I need you to calm down right now, please."
Tries to talk her down.
He's actually a good cop. He tries to defuse the situation.
He doesn't even pull his gun right away.
You know what you guys missed?
What?
I mean, I'm sorry, listeners.
It's
just a kind of a side note. Was the strain between Dr.
Roberts?
Paulson and Carter is because they both share a similar thing. I know we haven't talked about it.
That's not really brought up yet. You just know that they're married to
Does he mention his dad at this point? He mentioned Carter's dad is mentioned a few times. And
it's when the sheriff comes in.
Right. Okay. So
the doctor mentioned something like, "Hey, you shouldn't strain yourself. You're just like your father."
Right, and that'll become important later.
Okay.
So back to the face stabbing.
Stabbing. Yeah.
So he's like, "Please calm down," and she's like, Sydney said, "This is not my face," and then she's raising the scissors, and it seems to be a bad time. And he does not shoot her until she is like,
so she's like a foot away.
He is doing his job, and so he shoots her, and then people come running like, "What the hell happened? Oh my god, she's dead! Oh my god!" Like,
well, you could definitely tell by Carter's expression and how late he was to draw his weapon was the fact that he's probably one of those people that like has a boring job, nothing happens.
Yeah,
in
like
his town.
this is probably his first time he ever even had to pull a gun on somebody.
and it's funny
actually,
because this is probably it's like, oh, if he had to pull his gun on somebody, it would have been something casual. Whereas this is probably the most extreme thing he's ever faced, and most extreme most movies would ever get. But this right here, this face cutting off is like a 1 at this movie.
Yeah, and it happens almost right away.
We're at like the lowest level of the craziness.
We're like what?
That's one
15
of my
minutes
favorite
in the
parts
movie?
about this movie is that when things get more and more intense, like the characters seem like actual people going like they freeze up at first and then go,
I didn't expect
here,
this.
and then, yeah, like they're not expecting this.
Because
it's not how I thought my day was going to go.
It's less of your typical horror movie scream and more of a what the hell.
Yeah, and it's like they're not expecting deleted scene from Face Off to happen in the room.
Nice.
Thank you.
I like that.
Thank you.
So everyone
get
shows
the
up
Face Off.
at first. It's not worth mentioning that at first they're like a little like, what did you do? Why did you do that? But then they immediately realize, oh, she was fucking crazy.
Oh, look at her.
And so he has to run off into the bathroom. He has a very realistic reaction to having to shoot someone dead.
Yes. I actually really love this scene because he keeps saying, I have to call it in, I have to call it in. Everyone's like, just sitting there. I was like, I have to call it in, I have to call it in. And the first thing he does is goes and vomits.
He throws up, and then
he goes into a seizure.
like a little weird warping effect happens in the movie, and then he passes out, and this is where we get our first vision.
Yeah.
And it's so cool.
Fleshy, pulsating thing.
And then,
Like
and we're,
weird, ominous clouds.
yeah,
Like,
and this
No,
is
those were, I forget the name, but they're nebulas. They're big.
one of them
cos-
was a nebula.
and of
Yeah,
course,
but the other ones were
and
clouds.
the creepy clouds.
of course,
The nebula was so
hopefully
cool.
our
Yeah.
listeners know, but this is honestly the first visual of the void.
Right.
So-
I really want to hit on that nebula
Yeah.
that Sydney
Yes.
mentioned because
Okay.
that like I've never seen one that was like black smoke before. There always been like neon green or like bright multicolored things, whereas this one, it just looking at it felt like I was watching this like massive entity floating around.
But at
It
the
was
same
so
time,
cool because it also looked like Cthulhu. On the side.
like it looked like it had form. I don't know how to describe
no,
it. but-
it was abstract, but it looked like there's something there. And in all honesty, I don't know if you've ever seen that many pictures of nebulas and things like that. A lot of them actually do look like things, and that's part of your typical human brain trying to find patterns and shit.
And we see this desolate rocky wasteland with like black stone and jagged pillars shooting out of the side, and then we pan up to the clouds, and there's almost a hint of a pyramid, and then he wakes up.
Well, and then also there was a flash. I think it was right here. I think it was like he sees a flash of like ripped flesh or something,
Right.
like blood,
Like something's pulsating and gooey.
Yeah, that's it.
Which I love shots like that. I don't know why. It just
And
always
then of
makes me
course,
feel
yeah,
happy.
and then here we are. He wakes up.
And again, the first
if
thing
any-
he says when he wakes up is, "I gotta call it in."
If
Gotta call
anyone's,
it in, I
if
know.
anyone's ever played Mass Effect, it kind of feels
Yo.
like the visions you get from the, what do you call it?
the Reapers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say this movie gave me kind of a Dead Space vibe.
Yeah, which all of these things tie together
Yeah,
because they're
yeah,
Lovecraftian.
yeah.
But so yeah, he wakes up and they're all like, "Please don't move, and he's like, "Fuck you, I'm moving, I'm getting up."
I gotta call it in.
And Allison is like, "I really wouldn't recommend that." And but you could tell at a certain point she's giving up and like throwing her hands up in the air. It's like, let him do what he wants to do. If he falls back down, whatever.
But this is when you're introduced to our next character, right?
Yep.
He
Cop
keeps talking
Face
about
McGee.
he's got to call it in, but then someone tells him that state troopers are here.
He happened to be in the air.
He's
Which
forgettable.
seems
He's
kinda
almost
convenient.
He's almost forgettable, though. This
But
guy.
they do explain it.
They
at
do
least.
explain it, but it is like, given the situation that we eventually know this is, it is kind of interesting that it's like, oh, you just happened to show up.
and then like he asks for the weapon. He gives over the gun.
Well, there's like tension also between them
Yeah.
because this is like an old grizzled fucking.
And this is a small town where everyone knows each other,
Right.
because they just straight up right away call each other by their first names.
And he's like, I wonder what your father would have thought of you if
Exactly, yeah.
he'd seen this shit show. And it's like, he did nothing wrong.
I think he's referring more to his skittishness after shooting him.
It might be true, but I think he's just like jabbing him for the sake of it.
But
because
Carter is persistent, and he got to go call it in, guys.
Gotta go call it
so
in.
he goes to the telephone, and guess what, gang? It's a horror movie, so it doesn't work. Shocker!
No one pays their phone bill in horror movies.
No. And then he checks his walkie, and that doesn't work. And then he goes out into his car.
Oh, it's also worth mentioning that they kind of go out of their way to put old-timey blocky computers in there and everything. They want you to know that this is before cell phones.
I never got that feeling.
I didn't. Dude, that's
Nobody
good.
uses a cell phone, but
Yeah,
at the same time, when you look at the technology, the computer that Kim is typing on, it's one of those big, bulky IBMs.
Totally right.
Yeah, no,
Like, it's never even brought up. No one even tries.
Yeah, no one has a cell phone. Now, granted, like it's not like
really?
I don't think it's before cell phones entirely, but
It's
none
just
of
a
these
small-
characters have.
They
I was
probably
gonna
don't
say
have
no one's
phones.
dressed super old.
They probably don't have.
When I
like,
say
cell
old,
phone
I don't
towers or
even
something.
mean like 90. I don't like
early 2000s.
I'm saying like 2009. Maybe.
Like
Okay, I
the
can buy that.
hospitals have it outdated or
Mm-hmm.
something.
I never thought about that. But anyway, so he gets to the cop car and he tries to call it in there. And so this is the thing where, given what we know later, a lot of things could be happening right now. Like the interference with the void could be messing them up and making it so they can't get a signal out. The cult could be doing something that is making it so they can't get a signal out. Or this could be whatever's happening later is happening everywhere, so there's no one on the other end to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
And guess
So-
what, guys? You'll never know those answers.
You won't. So he
And that's a
tries-
good thing.
He tries, he fails, and then he looks up and notices, oh, there's just a dude standing there in a white, creepy ass robe, just staring at me.
I love this scene so much because like he just looks and goes, "Hi,
Hi.
Sup, friend?
how's it going?"
You're
Small-
not being. You could almost expect him to say, "You're not creepy at all."
Well, that's what I mean, though. It's like, it's definitely going to come up. This movie was made in Canada, and this feels like a Canadian cop's reaction. I don't mean like even by like stereotypical polite Canadian, but if this was an American-made movie, the cop would be blowing him up right away.
And I love that because you can tell he's obviously. It's not like he's like, "Oh, it's just some kid or something." He knows that this is weird, but he's also just like.
But he's also just like,
whatever.
let's de-escalate the
I've
situation.
already had a weird night tonight. This can't get any weirder.
and this
Boy, is he wrong.
See, and this is where I started thinking because it just happened. I felt like maybe the void, like that sheriff wasn't there, like it was the void because he took his weapon from him, and of course it made him very vulnerable when he gets outside.
Yes.
Which we're about to find out.
So he like gets out of the car and is like, "Yo, dude, what you doing?" And then something gets his attention to like look away. Is it the horn?
Yeah,
Yes,
it was
It's the horn.
The horn.
So there's
Yes.
this rad,
Massive.
fucking ominous, just
My favorite thing ever. Just a
Yeah, like that.
super loud trumpet sound.
What did you say it was like earlier?
The horns of Gabriel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
That's always
definitely-
my favorite
Yeah,
thing.
it's definitely the seven horns from the apocalypse. That's
Because
what I got from it.
it just
So it's the end of the
sounds
world.
like the sort of thing that
Yeah.
like the
That
entire world
indicates
is
something
hearing.
bad's happening.
And yeah, throughout the movie, like even when we get to the end, where it feels like the end
And
of the world.
he's like, "What in the fuck is that?" And then when he looks back, the dude is like,
On him.
yeah, and he's like pulling out a knife, and he's like, "Oh shit!" And they knock him to the ground, and then they're like wrestling over the
You
knife.
get
And
you get my favorite thing ever. Like anyone can do a stab scene in the movie, but it takes a lot of talent to really sell a slow stab.
yeah,
because he's trying to get the point away from him, but he's not strong enough right now, and the tip starts digging into his shoulder, and it gets pretty far.
Yeah,
Like,
pretty far. And the bad spot is the part of your shoulder you don't want to get cut in.
and then he just like elbows him and gets him away and runs back into the hospital, staggering, clutching at the blood as it's gushing everywhere, and he collapses. And they're like, "What the hell is going on?" And more of the dudes are showing up,
and I
like
would
the
say
cultists.
if he lost that much blood, he definitely would have passed out.
He did pass
It's the
out.
void.
I meant, but like, or
The void has a knife.
They would have had to give him some sort of like
All
transfusion.
answers are the void.
I know.
But yes,
Yeah.
there's like dozens of other cultists that are now surrounding
But
the
this is just
hospital
me nitpicking
as
that.
like they're all like, "Oh my god, what happened out there?" And like he's
And
like,
doesn't
blah,
he
blah.
pass out? Doesn't he
He
have
passes
another
out.
vision?
Yeah, he does.
Passes out again.
I think this time he has the vision of things that will happen in the
Yes.
future.
Yes.
movie.
Anyway,
So he starts to wake back up after this vision, and again, it's all like, "Please don't get up." He gets up. He can't keep a good man.
he doesn't
down.
have time. It's also really convenient that they also buttoned his shirt back up so you didn't have to see the makeup.
Right. So at this point, they're like, "Well, what the shit are we gonna do?" There's like a bunch of crazy people out there, and they're not coming in. They're not even trying. They're just standing outside watching the doors. And it's like, well, that sucks. And then you hear a scream, right? Am I missing anything?
I think you're right.
Oh yeah, we hear a yell.
We hear a yell.
Oh, okay,
from
that's right.
James.
And at first,
Oh,
Well, we
also,
hear a yell from James,
by the
and
way,
then we hear a yell that's
Oh,
from
okay.
Beverly
Oh.
that sounds like her
it was
at first.
Yeah. That's
by
right.
the way, it is worth mentioning that the first thing the sheriff says when he gets in is, "I handcuffed what's his name."
James.
I
Oh,
handcuffed the meth head to his bed.
So they hear the scream, and then he and Cop Face McGee are like, "Oh shit, we got to check out what's going on." And may I just say that Carter is like getting up and running very fast after all this.
Yeah.
And so they get into the room of what's his face, James. After I just said that, and oh god, we see a fun thing, don't we?
Yeah.
We do. No, I hear it more than see it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because the screams sound like Beverly at first, and then they start getting all warped and like, "Oh, this
Garbly.
isn't good."
Well, I can try and recreate it.
None of that sounded like it.
No.
So they get in. James is like, "Get me the fuck out of here!" And then they look over, and there's this mass of flesh and tentacles just whipping around, just like.
Now, one thing I did like. Okay, and we keep drawing comparisons to other stuff, specifically video games, weirdly enough. The Silent Hill-esque creature.
The writers said that they were very inspired by.
That's right, because it's not just a big blob of mass; it's a big blob of mass that's
With a
like
person on the front
with
of it.
like almost like she's holding up a corpse.
And her face is gone still.
Yeah.
So that's nice.
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
more gone. Like there's a jaw,
Hole?
and then like
Oh, that's right. That's
yeah,
right.
there's like a jaw, and then like the front part of her head is just gone. Like there's like a black cavity there now.
That is in her face.
It isn't.
isn't.
And so, like Sydney said, they have a very realistic reaction to this where they're like,
They don't horror movie scream. They just kind of stop and take a step back, and then they start doing stuff.
Again, I didn't expect to see that today. So yeah, he starts kicking the beam off because he doesn't have the beam that the handcuff is tied to, and they get James away as the thing is all like, and tentacles are whipping out, and
another tentacle.
they close the door on it and then run back into the hall, and then they're like, "We gotta leave."
Yeah.
And Allison is like, "What? How can we leave? Have you seen it out there?" And he's like, "It
Have you
doesn't
seen
matter
it in
what
here?
it's out there.
I'll take a dozen of those
You
guys.
need to trust me on this."
So right as they're leaving,
James is all like freaking out, and he grabs a scalpel and like.
Oh wait, no. They're about to leave, and then who should appear at the
That
hospital?
happens
Nick
after.
Cage.
No,
They
'Cause
show up and
they have the gun,
they
and that's
help
why she
deal
grabs the.
Exactly.
yeah.
Which is why James grabs her.
Oh, that's
first.
right. That's right. James grabs a scalpel, takes Maggie hostage.
Alice and
I thought it
No,
was the
not
pregnant
Allison.
lady.
no.
All right.
I'll
Anyway,
it
it
was
doesn't.
Maggie, it was Maggie.
Yeah, it was
takes
Maggie.
Maggie hostage with the scalpel.
And then the dudes show up. You hear a few gunshots.
I thought he grabbed the scalpel because he saw them.
no,
grabbed
he just
the
grabbed
door.
because he's just freaking out. And this
Like
point,
they're
and he
trying to
doesn't
calm him
know.
down, and then you hear gunshots, and they're like, "What the fuck? And who the hell are you guys?" The father and
okay.
son burst through the doors, having shot a few of the
I've only
dudes.
seen this once, for the record.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Gotcha. And so they're going after James, and James recognizes them, and he's like, "I'm not letting this fucking thing
Yeah,
go."
he starts freaking out even more.
And everyone's like shouting, and it's like, calm down, put your gun down, oh my god. And the dude's like, I'm not putting the fucking gun down.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Powell is all like, hey, brah, I got this. This isn't going to help you. Come on, just give me the scalpel. He's trying to do the whole, like, calm him down, get in close, make him feel like you have a connection, and then he gets stabbed in the throat.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Right in the throat.
Which
Persuasion skills 12.
He failed.
Which
He
the
failed
fir-
that
the
check.
first-
go ahead.
The first time I saw this, I did not see that coming because Powell seemed like a character that was going to stick around for
For
a while.
most of the movie.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, all right.
But
but there's like there was shock on his face, but at the same time, how much shock? Because we find out.
Exactly. But yes, he's like clutching at his throat. He falls down. It's bad time. And then who knocks? The grandpa knocks him out. Maggie's dad.
Okay.
Just
Ben.
like decks him in the face,
That's
and he
right.
just goes down. And then we have fucking.
Gentle Ben.
Then we have to deal with the father and son who are like, why do you got the guns? What the fuck's going on? And then Cop Face McGee is backing up and having a bad time. And during all of this confusion and anarchy, we saw a few clips of Beverly, or what is the artist formerly known as Beverly, is pushing open the door, crawling up, and then wraps Cop Face McGee with tentacles and drags him away.
Yeah.
Oh
And they're
dear
all
God,
like,
the boy knows how to open doors!
And again, nobody screams. I think the most you get is like one of the
This-
women going, "Oh my
this
god!"
is the time that everyone sees it because everyone looks over and is like, "What the?" And so Carter is all like, "Hey, dudes with guns, we should probably go deal with
Can
this."
you help me deal with this? And so father, I simultaneously love and hate his character Because on one hand, he's kind of going, no, fuck you, I just want this guy. But on the other hand, he's kind of gets, like, kind of starts doing that to an absurd degree.
He's just being an asshole at some point, and he knows it. So they all go after the cop face McGee, and when they find him, he's getting like tentacle fucked,
shoved right in his eyes,
like going down the mouth, going into his chest. It's a bad time all around. And for some reason, Carter gets there first and tries to fight her off, and he gets like knocked out immediately against the side of the wall. And then the father and son show up, and they don't seem that shocked.
No,
so they're just like ready to go to town. They shoot,
and the son has a fire axe with him.
Right. For some reason, as Beverly is eating this dude, something is like growing out of her back, like this globule thing.
Almost looks like a brain.
That they shoot, and that seems to weaken it.
I think it's, from what I think, is like it's part of its head.
So, it's an important part.
It could also be like a metamorphosis.
And they were like thinking like they're trying to shoot the brain or kill it, but of course
it keeps moving. So then they start chopping it up, and they really chop it up, just going to town. They cut off the tentacles that are what?
We forgot to mention that earlier in the movie, before shit really hits the fan, after Carter gets his gun taken away and he sees the cultist, he grabs an axe. And he grabs a fire axe from the hospital wall. And I specifically remember because it's the doctor who tells him, "What do you need that for?" And he's like, "Trust me, I need it." and then the son has his own slightly shittier axe.
So they kill the thing, or at least they keep smacking it until it stops moving.
They don't kill the thing. That's in 1998, J.R.R. Carpenter.
I fucking hate you.
Gosh.
It is really Thing-esque.
It is.
This is one of those movies that obviously draws a lot of inspiration, but it doesn't feel like a ripoff.
So they kill
exactly.
They keep smacking at her, and then he cuts off the head of Cop Face McGee because he knows some shit the other characters don't know yet.
Yes.
And then we all wander our way back into the lobby where Dr. Powell is dead. They're putting a sheet over his face, and they're like, "What happened?" And it was like, it was bad time.
Just real bad.
And then also, this is where Allison wants to move Maggie for the baby.
Right.
Yes. Like it's
to
slightly,
slightly safer.
They also have a little confrontation where the father is basically like totally down for going on a kill crazy rampage and killing everyone, and Carter is all like, "Hey dude, just calm down." He is just like so chill this entire movie, where he's just like,
it eventually gets to the point where it's kind of absurd, but it's almost refreshing for the first part of the movie.
And the father decks him in the face and is about to kill Allison, but then I forget, what did they do to like come? Oh yeah, they make a point to show, remember the last guys we trusted? The father says this to the son, and the son shows that he got like hit in the neck.
Because they specifically start asking the son what's going on, and then he mentions he can't answer you back. He's been rendered mute.
He doesn't talk for the whole movie, and you can tell that he's less down to like burn the place and kill everyone inside. But
father specifies that he's seen that this kid has seen some shit,
and so this gives us a clue that like they have seen this before, and they have seen these sorts of monsters before, and they know that this is probably going to go bad if they play along and like don't rock out and kill everyone.
Have you noticed like they're in on something? Like they know like the outcome because they've come from that farm where they already had it.
Well, it went to before that.
You notice that like everything from the shotgun blast to the firing on the girl and stuff. There's a reason why they're not having the father kill. You know, see, remember.
Wait, what?
Remember how like we were talking? Oh, we'll talk more about it towards the end. But what I'm saying is the father hasn't spelt blood yet.
He hasn't killed a human.
He hasn't killed a human yet.
You're right.
He's making his son carry the axe, making his son do all these.
To be fair, we did see the father burn someone.
No, he's the one who throws the mat. He throws the cigarette.
Oh, I guess that is true.
So
I was going to say, like, I'm not sure about this.
Yeah.
So,
never mind.
My
Scratch that train of thought.
I wasn't going to say. I was sitting here like, what are you talking about?
Well, I was thinking about it, and I was like, the kid forced the gasoline, and then he.
Oh yeah.
I think it's a very father-son duo.
As much as I like to dislike people who wear sweaters.
That's why they burned her.
That's why they burned her. It was
just edit all that out.
No, it's staying.
That's staying in the run.
So before,
see, this is the thought process of this damn movie.
They all kind of retreat to this one area, but before they do that, they decide we should probably do something with that body. So they take what is left of Beverly's body and roll it out on the stretcher.
Yes.
On fire. Because they're like, we've seen horror movies. We don't want that thing coming back.
Plus, that's a really reasonable reaction in a hospital specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this could be a horrible disease. Got to burn off the disease so no one else catches it.
So then they get into that little, retreat area, and Maggie is starting to have, contractions, and things are going bad, and they're like, well, shit, what are we going to do? And a little bit of character goes down, a little bit of arguing, and at some point, Allison and Carter get off talking to each other, and she's like, I need supplies, I need to go and do stuff and help her, and he's like, fucking don't do that. And then something is brought up.
Because she needs a C-section.
And something is brought up in such a way where it's like, are you doing this because of what happened? And she's like, fuck no, I'm not. I'm doing it because we need to help her.
Yeah.
So we get more history between them of what caused them to separate.
And this is when they decide that if they're going to move, they need another weapon. So
First, she promises not to go for the stuff. He's back.
She did. That's right. She did. She said she would not retreat to the because pretty much this hospital shut down. Like it's like they're only operating with one or two rooms. It's not big. One doctor, two nurses.
Another little character thing that happens is the father and son are dicking around.
I was just about to say. I was about to bring this up.
They're dicking around with their equipment and stuff, and as they're doing that, a shoe falls out.
A blood-covered baby shoe.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh, well, I guess what's happened to them.
He picks it up, he cradles it, and holds it close.
He kind of stares down with Kim because she noticed this as it happened. And that's all that happens there. No one discusses it, but
you can tell there's secrets among these.
He ate
people.
the baby.
He ate the baby.
He totally did not.
Way to spoil it.
Chili's baby back ribs.
Oh no, baby back ribs.
Now I'm hungry.
Get sued by Applebee's. They're already going bankrupt.
It's not even Applebee's.
Or Chili, whatever. Shit.
Okay, I was about to say, if they're already going bankrupt, then what do we have to worry about?
That's true.
So yes,
they'll sue us for more money.
As Ron said, they decide they need to get another weapon, and he has a shotgun in his police car. And the dude's like, "I'm not fucking going out there to help you, you asshole. I'm just gonna do whatever I want." And he's like, "Okay, if I come out and help you, I get the gun.
I get the shotgun."
And Carter's like, "Of course,
of course."
And then
so we all know how Carter does with weapons.
Well, they all
shakes and violently throws up.
That's why it's great later on, though. But first, they all get themselves ready, and then they peek out the door, and all the cultists are gone. They'd been standing out there, and we talked a little bit earlier in this podcast. But this is the part where I would be freaking out if I was in this situation because, I would just be like, "Oh, they're all out in the tree. They're watching us. They're just being assholes.
There's no way
they're gonna kill us all."
But of course, the car is further away.
Yeah, the car is much further away.
Much further away.
And there's a point about this because Carter said that it's like, oh, it's just right outside, and then when they get out, it's like half a mile.
It's almost
down the
like
road.
a block away, almost.
And they're like, what the hell? And so they start moving for it. The kid's grabbing the ammo, and then they have a kind of rig where the shotgun's locked in this thing. So
really, and it's real realistic thing, a double lock even.
So they're fumbling with it. They're trying to get it. They're not having a very good time of it. And then we go back inside where Allison is like, "Fuck y'all! I'm going to get supplies."
I'm not waiting.
Yeah.
And so she goes and gets the supplies. She
pretty much did that while they're outside.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they're she's grabbing the stuff, and then it's this wonderful shot where she's grabbing things off the shelf, and then when she bends down, something is behind her.
Yep.
Oh no!
Who could it be?
And then we cut back.
We're out of characters, right?
We are. And then we cut back. We cut back outside. And what's happening is they're still he's having a really difficult time getting this gun out of this fucking contraption.
Yep.
And then one of the cultists shows up, and they're just like, "Oh shit, this is gonna be a bad time. You need to get out of there now."
Starts slowly walking forward.
For some reason, he turns on the cop lights.
I think it's because he's fumbling. He literally just hits the switch with his
elbow. And that
elbow.
illuminates that there are many more.
Many more.
And
that's actually my favorite scene in the movie.
That's just something about flashing red and white lights.
And a bunch of cloaked figures in trees,
So he gets a shotgun, and we see that they close the trunk door, and behind the son is a cultist, and you're like, "Oh no!"
With the knife in the air.
He slashes at him, gets him across the hand, but then Carter makes the save by shooting him in the chest and killing him dead.
Blasts him away.
He cocks it and has the only action hero line of the movie where he's like, "I'm keeping the fucking gun." He had no intention of playing along
grew
with him.
this big.
Three sizes that day.
He was like, "Fuck y'all."
And they say in that town.
So they get back inside, and they run by. They get back, and they see, well, where the fuck is Allison? And then they're like, oh, she went off to get supplies. And he's like, son of a...
There's another great little character building moment where one of the nurses sees the cut on his hand, and he's like, we have to take care of that.
Kim does this.
Kim sees it, and he's like, we have to take care of that. And the father's like, he's been through worse. Don't worry about this. And they just throw some gauze on it and call it good. A great way to completely... Because, like, Carter has some pretty debilitating injuries at this point.
He does.
And he's totally fine and they never bring it up. I like how they at least kind of give a little bit of reason to, like, granted, it's not as debilitating.
What my answer is? The Void.
The Void. The Void.
Oh, dear God, the Void has guns!
The Void has guns.
It's keeping him alive.
It's keeping him alive.
Yeah, this is the part where, like, the son, the father... I think, James and Carter, they go off to try to look for...
I think I just realized something.
I have a line of what they say right there.
I was going to... Okay,
because Carter and the father go off to, like, go after Allison, and you guys talk amongst yourselves for a second. Never mind.
Okay.
So they're going on, and father is giving him shit because he's always giving everyone shit at every point in time.
And like I said, it starts off kind of cool at first, but then it gets kind of absurd where it's like, all right, man, we're obviously in this together. Quit being an asshole.
And so Carter turns around and is like, look, I realize you could probably beat the shit out of me, but right now I need you to shut the fuck up.
Yes. No, because he's specifically saying stuff, man, you're dumb as shit wife. And he turns around and he's like, I have full right to be pissed off as my wife, so you just shut the fuck up.
That was such a good moment.
That was good.
So yeah, they go off, they find the bag of dropped supplies, and they're like, well shit, something took her. And then they start like wandering about a bit, and they find Dr. Powell's office. And they wander into the office, and they're like, oh, what's going on? Oh wait, no, they go in because there's a phone ringing in it. And so he answers the phone, and it's Dr. Powell.
It's Dr. Powell.
Because
He's
as
so
they were
alive.
coming out to look for Allison,
They
they
realized
turned
the
around
body's
and
gone.
he's not under the sheet anymore. Oh no.
It's not even a sheet, it's his lab coat, which
Oh,
I
yeah.
think is a pretty... his blood-covered lab coat, which I think is actually a pretty cool visual.
So yeah, Dr. Powell's all like,
It's kind of like...
hello,
Him
Carter."
losing his blood-covered, like, his lab coat kind of shows that he's shedding off his
Like
desire to help.
metamorphosis.
No, not so much that.
Oh.
It's not even something that literal. It's more
Okay.
like, you know, that coat and being a doctor is a sign that you're supposed to help people.
Oh, yeah.
And he throws it on the ground all bloodied, so it's like, hey, he's not really helping anymore.
Yeah, he's calling on the phone. And he's
Well,
all like, no,
I have a fight
I
with
got your
that one.
wife.
I've got your wife. Well, I know what you're going to say,
okay.
but he's not really.
I know, but
Yeah.
he
I forget-
truly feels that way.
I forget
Anyway.
all the lines that he has, but he's basically just like,
He's just being he's being a video game boss.
he's being a video game boss, but he's also like being a like Lovecraftian cult leader, where he's all like, "Oh, there are things so much farther beyond us. If you only had the eyes,
If
to
you had
see,"
the
or
eyes, if you
shit
had
like
eyes
that.
on the inside,
eyes in our brains,
eyes
are yet
eyes
to open.
are yet to
okay,
open.
we're making Bloodborne
Sorry.
references, Rod. I'm
because
sorry.
it's also
I
Lovecraftian.
don't-
He'll play it eventually.
Cause, or some say cousin.
Cousin.
I fucking love Mikolash. Anyway,
so good.
It's a horror podcast.
it-
It's a horror game.
it's the best horror
I
game in like the
never
last
played it.
40 years now.
That smell, it's enough to drive a man mad. Anyway, anyway,
So as they're on this phone call, Fatherface McGee is looking into this like tin where he finds a book, and of course the book is filled with all these like horrible.
Like anyone to look at this and say, "Look at this demon
Oh,
shit."
he's a Satanist
Yeah.
because there's like triangles and like in concentric circles, and it's like, oh, this is clearly done as a ritual to summon Pazuzu or some shit. And he starts finding pictures, and the pictures are of like horrible mutated experiments, like people ripped apart. All
There's
sorts of
also
weird
like
things.
some weird images that also seem a little erotic. You can't really see what that is, but it kind of looks like some
That's,
sort
that's
of
very
orgy.
Silent Hillish, where it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
this is clearly a monster, but there's something.
Sexual terror.
And
So,
then
yeah,
there
at this
was
point we know-
cultists on Twister, and
At this point, we know that Dr. So Dr. Powell's the main antagonist, and he's been like running crazy ass experiments from this hospital. Fun.
Shit ass fuck cults.
Yep.
Well, technically, like from what I get, is Powell is the reason why these towns are starting to.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is all him
Like,
because he said,
So-
"Oh, one of the things he uses to taunt Carter with is like, oh, it's such a pain to lose a daughter, isn't it? Blah blah blah. You're never quite whole
Well, see,
again.
this is
I know exactly what you went
and see, and
through."
this was the strain at the beginning with them is because they both share the same sort of.
I think what's his name? I want to say Cowell, but I know that's not right. Carter and his wife, she suffered a miscarriage. I think is what it is. They never specify what it is, but I get miscarriage.
They do.
It is.
Yeah. Oh, never mind then.
Yeah, because Powell is taunting her and specifically says like, "Oh, it's such a fault of nature that an umbilical cord could strangle
gets
the
wrapped
life."
around the neck. That's right.
But so yeah, he's basically like, "Oh, I lost my daughter, and you must understand, I would do anything to get her back."
Which
hangs up.
Pretty much what he's doing is he's summoned this void or whatever, this ancient rituals.
Ancient evil.
They believe that older than God, like the oldest gods.
later.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You're doing good, Ron.
Guess what?
Yeah.
They should have watched this movie. We should tell them the end right now.
Yeah, but you gotta have some sort of tension build up.
Now is not the time of fear. That comes later.
That comes later.
So they regroup back at the place where all the other people are, and Maggie's really not having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the father, son, and Carter are all like, "Okay, I guess we gotta go off and try to save her." And so Carter goes to Kim and is all like, "Okay, so you have to take care of this baby delivery." And she's like, "What the fuck are you talking about?" Because she has no experience with this whatsoever.
And this isn't just a baby delivery. They specify that she needs a C-section.
Like it's a bad time.
Like, if she gives birth, both the baby and her are going to die.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, no pressure. You're going to be fine.
She'll be fine.
And so they also give her, she has a map and a walkie-talkie so she can guide them through the hospital.
Oh, shoot.
What?
Because we keep bringing up Silent Hill. Obviously a reference to that. And this is stuff I'm going to bring up too. Very beginning of the movie when he goes to call it in. And, of course, the radio's out, or the phone is out, so you get radio static. And it's literally the exact same radio static from the first few games.
Really?
Yeah.
Ron, you should really play Silent Hill. They're so good. 1 through 4.
1 through...
Never play another
just
one.
Just play 1 through 3. That's all you really need.
1 through 3.
And don't play the HD collection. They're trash.
Watch PT, too.
Oh,
and get
God.
sad.
Because then you'll never get it.
Because you'll never.
We'll have it. We should have an entire podcast about PT and just cry the entire time. Like, it could have been so beautiful.
And you know what's weird? They found hidden files in Metal Gear Solid 5.
Oh, yeah. That was likely.
Anyway, let's get back to the movie.
So that's all sorted out, and then Father McGee is being an asshole again. I don't remember how, but he is. And so they start going off into the hospital, and it's all decrepit and scary looking, and fun behind-the-scenes fact, most of this was shot at a school that they did up to look like a hospital. The parts where they're going through, like, the dilapidated, burnt-down shit, that was an actual hospital that was actually dilapidated and burnt down.
That's cool.
So, yeah.
I know that. All right.
That's pretty rad.
So Kim is all like...
I think someone just sprayed something.
Yeah.
Because we're so smelly.
Yes.
So Kim is all like, "Hey, you need to go down this flight of stairs," and they go down the flight of stairs, and she's like, "Okay, so the door should be right in front of you." And they're like, "I only see more hallways," and she's like, "The fuck are you talking about? There aren't any more hallways."
There aren't any more hallways.
And then they find another set of stairs, and he's like, "Did you send them to the wrong stairs?" And she's like, "There was only one set of stairs in this hospital."
It's like, do you have a basement?
A sub-basement or something? It's like, there's no sub-basement.
So this along with how far away the car was in the beginning, is showing that reality is bending and twisting because of the effects.
My favorite word: non-Euclidean space.
Oh yes, that's a Lovecraft thing.
Yeah.
And
Euclidean?
Yeah, it's like basically like you go. Okay, so you see a house. Not quite. It's a little cooler than that. So say you see a house and you look at the outside of this house. This house obviously has 4 rooms, nothing more. You go inside. There's 3 flights of stairs, 16 bathrooms. It doesn't make any sense. Some of the hallways go upside down. That's non-Euclidean
Kind of like
space.
in Muckman when we saw the
kind of like
big,
in Muckman.
Kind of like
the big cabin, and then all
just
of a sudden we go
just
in
like in
one room.
Muckman. Yeah, exactly like Muckman.
Let's never call back to that movie again.
Muckman.
And then so they go through this door, and the Muckman shows up, and it's all like, "Oh, Mad was the real monster all along." So that doesn't happen.
Okay. Let me just kind of clarify. I'm sorry. No, I'm not even talking about stuff we missed. This is just like, okay. So I've gone on rants several times before about how much I hate that. I think that's another one of the reasons why I love Lovecraftian horror so much is because a man is pretty monstrous, but that shit out there is really monstrous.
There's like 20-story tall octopoidian dragon things
that literally kills people, and that's pretty monstrous. Anyway, what did we miss, Jesse?
We missed that they grabbed James because he knows what's going on.
Yes.
Why you already said that? They grabbed James.
Also they torture him a little.
Yeah.
Well, it's great because they don't actually.
I know.
Okay.
Which is why I think like the son is the one doing it, and he's like threatening to like smash his finger with a hammer if they don't tell him everything he knows, because clearly he was involved in this cult stuff. So, tell us what we need to know to help fight this thing. And so he's like, I don't know anything, and
You're never gonna know, guys.
Well, he does. He does specify what happened. Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
They smack the hammer down, and you hear they cut away to like the rest of the characters, and you hear this like blood curdling scream. But then you cut back, and he just like intentionally missed.
Yeah, and hit the wall. Anyway,
did
he
intentionally miss?
I think so.
Because I'm pretty sure I would miss that.
The son
too.
seems to be nicer than the father,
and you do get some explanation from him for what happens in the farmhouse
because it was like a drug den.
Yeah, because
they lured him in with the drugs.
They lure him in with the drugs and a whole bunch of other drug addicts, and they basically are like, hey, while we're all here, do you want to have a big drug orgy? And so then they kind of use that to fuel the ritual.
And then bad things
and
start
then
happening.
really bad things start to happen.
Oh no, the void has black tar heroin.
He specifically says it's like something out of the worst nightmare you've ever had. And
Weird
he's
experiments
not
and
wrong.
shit.
So they're dragging him along, kind of making him go first through all the doors.
And that's one of my favorite things, because at this point, the cop just snaps. He's not being protective cop
He's
anymore.
like, I'm
He's
protecting my wife.
Just go.
It really makes me think of D&D sessions when you throw that one character into every room. It's like, are you
Go the
dead
fuck
yet?
in there, Dave.
No? Okay, yeah, well, let's go back in.
So they get through the door, and this is where we cut to Allison waking up on a surgery table. And she's like, what the fuck is going on? And Dr. Powell is all being flowery and philosophical again. It's like, death is not the end. It is merely a cocoon for us to become something greater, or something like that.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about later, because that kind of involves what the monsters are or what's happening. It's kind of implying that, like, they're turning into monsters, but like the seed of that is already there within like everyone.
AKA they're Cenobites, guys.
They're Cenobites.
Mic drop.
We'll talk about that later.
There's plenty to talk about.
So he's turned away from her as he's doing this, and you see him kind of like snip, and then like dropping something off in the sink, but you don't see what he's dropping off in the sink. And is there anything else in that?
I assume, like, what we assume is he's snipping parts of his flesh.
Yeah, he like later. It's supposed to be a reveal.
Yeah,
he, like,
but it's super obvious
like,
right away.
Like at that point, like I knew he was cutting his skin off. Like he was changing to what he was going to be. Kind of like going back to what is it, Nurse
Beverly.
Like she morphed into something different. Now it seems like
his transformation seems way chiller.
Yeah.
But anyway,
okay.
There are two scenes where they cut back to this, and I believe what he says to round off this first time is basically that it's like, oh, I've tried so many times and there were so many failed experiments. They're all still down here with us. And you're just like, oh.
Oh, that's actually my favorite line in the whole movie. Comes up. I think it's like, or just when he brings up like what their current state is.
He's like, I won't let them die.
No, they realize better. It's something like, they want to die, but I won't let them.
And you're just like, oh. So they bust into this room, and the Carter and father and son and James, they bust into this room. There was that weird shit that was in the notebook earlier is now on the floor, and they toss out a flare to like light up the room, and they're like, okay, this is some. The father is
some
like
dank ass shit.
The father is like, this was a mistake. We shouldn't have come down here. This is worse than anything I've seen. It's a bad time. And that's where we start seeing all of the experiments that he mentioned earlier. The first one we meet is No Face McGee again. He's back from the autopsy of Jane Doe with less of a face.
With less of a face.
Because they hear this like sickening smacking sound.
Snacking, slurping
and they
noise.
look over, and there's this pole sticking out of the wall, and there's this like straight-jacketed, carved-up Frankenstein Silent Hill looking thing beating its head into the pole and through the pole.
Cause
that reminds me so much of Dead Space.
Yeah.
And when they find the room full of botched experiments, James, before they saw the people, James said that he's been there. So now you know that from the farm to the basement of the hospital, it's like the same reality.
It's non-Euclidean space.
Yeah. So it's like
you can be in two places at once.
Dr. Powell is like messing with some fucked up magic here.
And so all the things start waking up and are like, hey, how are you? And one thing real fast is like that thing was beating its head into the pipe because of what Dr. Powell said, where it really wants to die.
It's really sick of this. And I really love that, Because it shows that it's been doing that for a very long time.
It doesn't.
Like there's a hole in
Yeah,
its
the
head.
back of its head. So they all start waking up, and there's also another figure that appears. You see like 2 floating feet passing down the hall, like
The
dripping blood.
Cenobites,
Yeah.
No, these are more like
They're more-
necromorphs.
Yeah, they're
It was,
more
it was
necromorph.
Psychomantis.
Psychomantis.
So things start going to hell in a handbasket really fast. I've never said that before in my life.
It's a fun phrase. I like it.
But so they start fighting for their lives, and at one point, the father keeps seeing this woman holding a baby, and you, as the audience, never really get a good look at her. Like, it's only like every shot that has her is like for a half a second, and she's always like usually behind something.
Yeah, and the only times you would be able to see her face, she's blurred out of focus.
So he chases off after her for some reason, and then the son is like, "What the fuck are you doing, man?" And so,
Of course, he doesn't say that because he's mute.
yeah, they kind of get separated here because Carter and James start going in like a different hallway, and they pass by Twisty Arm McGee, who I love because that was like the actor who played that was like a super like double jointed contortionist thing.
No,
So
that's-
he's like walking backwards and like all unnaturally.
It reminded me a lot of the one good thing from the Silent Hill movies, or how they got dancers to play the nurses.
Yep. He was really cool, and for some reason, James decides now is when he's going to try to bust out and run away. So he was handcuffed this whole time. So he like jumps on Carter's back and is all like, "I'm not fucking dying down here," and he dies down here.
He straight up gets killed.
Super hard.
They like throw him down to the ground, and like the Twisty Arm McGee like drags him away, and you just get this wonderful shot of it like grabbing the back of his head and just smack, smack, smack into the pavement. And just like giblets and teeth, and like it's all a good time.
It's really good visuals.
And I think this is when we cut back to Powell and Allison for the second time, and this is where he's being all what?
Okay, go ahead. No,
This
go
is where
ahead.
he's being all more flowery again. I don't remember what he says because
But
you're right.
that-
It's so video gamey.
Oh,
that's-
he says he's pretty much, he could just hear the voice. He can't see Dr. Powell, and he's pretty much in his head saying stuff like, and this is why I believe it's a vision. It's the void showing what he's wanting them to see. But it shows Allison laying on the table, and he was saying it's a shame about losing their kid.
Oh yeah,
to the
this is where they
umbilical
talk about
cord.
the umbilical.
Yes.
Yeah, and he goes, but you had relief. Like, so you found out that there was guilt. Like, he
Right.
had some sort of relief that the baby died. Like, he didn't want to be a father. Or
This
he was
is
scared
to
be a
Carter,
father.
not Allison.
Yes.
Allison wanted the baby.
Yeah, Allison. Yeah, this is to Carter. Carter's hearing all this.
Carter found his way into this
Yeah.
place, and what happens? I think Powell also mentions this point about his kind of plan to revive his daughter, and revive in the weirdest terms because he's
Yeah.
like foregone humanity, and he like I think he knows that whatever is going to come back is not going to be
Yeah.
in the
Completely
form of the daughter.
Yeah.
It's going to, in his mind. I think. He compared it to a cocoon earlier, so
Yeah.
I'm thinking he views humanity as like grubs or like what do you call them,
Well,
caterpillars.
and then that's kind of. Oh, sorry.
the void changes you into a butterfly, what you are meant to be, basically.
And that's kind of what I was getting at when they're fighting the nurse at the very beginning of the movie, and the thing pops out. That's
Right.
what I honestly thought. It was more of like a chrysalis hatching or
that
something.
works. I like that. So that's what he's basically laying out the plan. That it's like all of this was to get her back. It's gonna be a good time.
So pretty much like the whole plot why he grabbed this is he found a way to cheat death by like he ended like where no one will die. It's like you die in your physical form, but then you metamorph into.
And that's like the most directly Lovecraftian thing in this movie because I forget the quote, but it's basically something along the lines of "And after strange eons, even death may die."
Oh yeah,
And that's
pretty much.
that's
it.
basically what Powell is like striving for. It's like we do not have to be like bound to
He
these
wants
mortal
to
forms
break
anymore.
the cycle. I think is what he specifically
It's,
says.
it's basically like ascending to a higher state of existence. That's what he thinks the monsters of the void are. Anyway.
I'm all down for that. in all
And then,
honesty.
of course, right after he found out about that, that's when he visualized the tentacles coming out of the wife.
So yeah, Carter found his way in
Yeah.
here, and at first when he walked up, she was alive. She was like, "Oh hey, help me! I'm doing a good time here." And
Now, is this when they kind of, because we did kind of forget a little bit of a
yeah,
scene.
we skipped a part because we started talking about this.
You skipped this Well,
yeah.
but I wasn't gonna.
What happens before this is we find
This
the
is when
son
you get Pal's
chasing
face revealed.
Oh well, that too.
Oh, sorry, shit.
Yeah,
this
the face
is kind of simultaneously happening.
Yeah.
the face reveal is whatever. But the son is running after the father down a hallway, and he hears him like calling for something.
No, you say whatever, but there is one great part of that scene where he's kind of gloating a bit more, like, "Oh, your daughter died," and then he lifts up the blanket, and you can see her womb pulsating, and then he says something like, "But don't worry, you get to try again," or something like that.
So yeah,
it's kind of fucked up. I kind of liked it.
I don't know why, but I really kind of love that in horror movies, wherever there's like a woman who's like impregnated with something she should not be impregnated with, and it's like
it's a
striking
visual. There was a video game. There was a movie me and Haley found recently called, or we saw like something talking about it called, I want to say Xeon or something like that. Something weird. There's a scene where a woman gives birth to a fully grown man. It is legitimately horrifying.
I saw something like that in an anime once, and it was awesome.
Yeah. Anyway.
So
it's a striking visual.
Last movie I saw I can relate this to is Prometheus.
Oh yeah, see, that's my favorite part of Prometheus.
I've never seen Prometheus yet, so
don't hate that.
Okay, that's the only thing.
Well, you're right to be wrong.
Okay,
so the son is running down the hall after his father. We assume it's his father, but yeah. And as he's running down the hallway of this former hospital, he starts seeing pictures on the wall, and it's pictures of him and his family, presumably. And it's like, well, how the fuck is this possible?
This is the father's.
Right. And then, as Sydney said, it's non-Euclidean geometry. So as they get through the end of this hallway, they're in what I assume is their former house, and he's walking through, looking around, and then he finds his dad talking to somebody who wasn't there. And then the father turns around and is like, "You were supposed to protect them."
I was gone. You have to protect them.
And then he starts choking him out and trying to kill him.
Yeah.
you
ahead.
No,
I have been talking a lot. You
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Feel
free to interrupt because I'm not going to stop talking.
The father. See, and this is where I think, because at the same time that he saw that, Carter was seeing his wife. So I think they were both visions, and he was giving them those visions because he needs them to kill, because you have to kill to become a creature. And so I feel like at this point, like he put guilt with the father, and the only way he snapped the father out of it was
jamming him with a flare to like shock him out of the hallucination. Before James died, the father was already having this, like, he was clutching at his head, having some visions, and James like recognized that as such. So he had seen this before. Apparently, this is a common thing to the people who are affected by the void, where they start like seeing these things that aren't there. So yes, he shakes him out of the thing, and they're like, "Well, we'll never discuss that again because that was obviously traumatic for both of us."
Yep.
So the backstory there obviously is that we assume the cult burst in to their family before they knew anything about all this.
Well, he was gone for whatever reason, work or what have you.
Killed the little sister and the mother for some reason.
And almost killed the son.
Right. So then this is the part chronologically where Carter finds Allison in the thing. And as I said, at first he walks up and everything is fine as it can be. She's alive. She's talking to him. They're having a little moment.
She even has a little baby bump.
And then Dr. Powell is all like, "Oh yes, you see, I could give you all that you want. Blah blah blah. Isn't she beautiful?" And then like it cuts and shows that like instead of that like plain nice little room, there are tentacles growing everywhere. Fleshy growths are like surrounding her, and she's all like sticky and gooey. And it's like, okay, she's very dead. And he's like, and this is the part where you said, where he's like, you felt relief. I saw that in you the moment it happened, and blah blah blah. So
and that was his guilt for it, you know.
So he's like super goading him with the most personal thing. So now you realize why they were estranged from each other is because they had the abortion, not the abortion. They had the miscarriage, and that tore them apart. They like. It was one of those things where it's like, it's not like they fell out of love with each other. They just couldn't be around each other. It felt more like Carter couldn't be around her. Like, she seemed more open to him than he was to her.
Yeah, he was like, she was the one who was trying to be nice at the beginning, and he's the one who's all like, "Why are you doing this?"
Nervous and shaky.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't take it after what he felt.
A little side story. When I was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck, and my mom had to stop pushing, and they had to like, you know, do all this stuff.
And then the void happened.
And then he grabbed the cord, ripped it in half, and screamed.
No, because I thought about that happened to me, and I'm like, how often does this happen?
No, and well, see,
More than you would hope.
I was actually born super premature too, and apparently I died a couple times.
Oh shit! Well, you won.
I
Get
had
him the award.
I had a twin who didn't make it, so like that was, and not like as the birth happened. It was like months before.
Oh,
that.
I thought you were gonna say you absorbed him.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, so now I have
I
the strength.
absorbed his power.
Oh, there's that
power.
great line in
You know,
The
Elvis was
Office
a
where he's
twin.
like, "I absorbed my twin in the womb, so now I have the strength of a grown man and a little baby."
Oh shit!
That was a weird tangent.
All right.
So basically, he decides, no, I don't want this. Fuck you. I'm gonna chop her up, and so he chops her up in a very tasteful scene as the sound goes quiet and it cuts outside of the room, and you just see his shadow like plunge.
Is there
into the
music
accent.
playing? Because I vaguely remember
Music
there
is
just being
playing.
like, okay,
But you just don't hear the sound of
Okay.
And
that.
God,
No,
I'm just joking.
Margaritaville.
And then after this, we cut to the grand hall where there are like gurneys with like with bodies and stuff.
Chaz Boder, why?
not Skelemon.
We knocked a skeleton over. So they walk into this big hall with the gurneys and stuff, and he's got his axe ready and handy to go. And then Powell is all like, "Oh yes, you have entered the final domain."
Wow.
Now, is this
and,
one-
and the room, like we see, the first thing we see is the glowing triangle.
Yes.
Like we
Yes.
see the glowing
We
triangle.
see, we see the glowing triangle, but it's
Just
not
the
like
outline,
hollow yet.
just the outline,
And
yeah.
we skipped over a thing.
Go ahead.
Fuck.
We
Shit.
cut back to Kim at some point, who was all like, "Okay, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. It's gonna
She's
be a good time."
so forgettable.
And then, and I liked her.
No,
and then,
I liked her sassiness.
and then they pulled back the blanket that was covering Maggie, and she's bleeding everywhere. And they're like, "Oh, it's
Which-
happening now."
I'm not a doctor, but if a pregnant woman is bleeding from that area, I don't think it's a good sign.
I don't think it's a good sign
No,
either.
no,
So then it's basically like, okay, we have to perform the C-section now. And then you hear a crashing breaking sound outside, and they're like, oh, they're inside.
right.
That's not okay.
Yep.
And so Grandfather McGee is all like, I'll hold them off. I'll hold those bastards off, and you got to do this. You got to do this. And she's
Love
like,
Grandpa.
but I can't. I don't know what I'm doing. And he's like, you have to. You have to save her. And then she...
All of a
then-
sudden, he starts bleeding from the throat.
And you're just like, what the fuck just
You
happened?
don't even see the scalpel
yeah,
go through.
like
him.
I literally
don't-
thought it like came out of nowhere.
Kim screams, and then Grandfather McGee falls down, and then Maggie is standing there with a chipper smile on her face, like, it's time.
It's time.
Whee!
And then she goes with the hooded.
Yeah, the hooded dude
the
show up,
robes.
and they walk
Yeah.
away, and she's all like, it's time for my becoming, or whatever.
So
and
Kim punks a few with a fire extinguisher, which is pretty cool.
Kim's like, get the fuck away from me. Why did you do that and stuff? So,
Poor
yeah.
Kim.
So,
And we won't see Kim until the very end.
Yep.
well,
She-
we will.
Yeah.
She tries to run away,
Oh,
and there are
okay.
two dudes standing at the door, and she's like, well, shit. And then she turns around, and there are two dudes
Oh, I know
escorting
that.
Maggie
Oh,
away.
that's right. That's right.
And then we cut away from her. We'll cut back to her again, and then then we cut back, and Powell is continuing on his speech, just like, "Oh, you could have them both again, Allison and your child. Have you seen what I have become?" And then he steps out and is all, That's not what Powell talks like.
No,
It
he just sounds like a
Yeah,
generic old
he
man.
does.
But the thing is, I like this version much
It's better. Like if he was a little more cartoony, I think I would have liked him more.
We're not so different, you and I. The cliche line. But yeah, he steps out and he's lost
No,
all of his
Mr.
skin.
Cotter, I expect you to die.
Nice try, Snake, but Metal Gear is full.
He steps out. He doesn't have any skin. He's this weird, like, black, cartilagey, weird-looking skeleton. man.
Which I will give it up for the special effects people.
That was
they
rad.
are so good.
And
I
he's
didn't.
like,
I didn't think it. I didn't look as good as I wanted it
See, I
to.
thought it was
I know
awesome.
Plus,
exactly.
I get that it was kind of supposed to be a send up, but he looked too much like the guy from Hellraiser 1.
right, when he's, like, doesn't have a skin anymore,
Yeah.
and he's just, like, pulpy red and stuff.
Yeah, I wanted him to be a little more grotesque than he was.
But he's
I wanted him to look pulpy and red.
Yeah.
This is the part where he's like, and now I will tell you my villainous plan, and I will explain everything except for the things I don't. This is the void. It is a place that has existed since the dawn of creation, and the things living inside have existed before God and man.
Since before the gods.
And then he's like, the things that come out of here will affect us all and change us and bring us to a higher state of being. And I don't know what I'm doing.
Sorry, no,
That's
you're
good.
doing the best job.
All right, and then
yeah.
is this when Carter tries to do something about it?
Carter is all like, yo, man, go fuck yourself.
He
But he
takes a
doesn't
step
try to do
forward.
anything
he
yet.
tries
that's right.
and he tries to lure him in with saying like you could be with Alice again, all you have to pretty much do is die, like so you could be reborn.
And then he's like, "Fuck you!" And then you hear a little stink, and then
Knife in his back.
And then Maggie is all like, "Hey, how's it going?" And he falls down. The knife is really far into his back.
Yeah, like this time.
super far.
This is like one of those
Not
little
out of the
parts.
front, the back. This dude is surviving so much.
And now, young
Better-
Carter, you will die.
But see, here's one of those things. Did he die?
Not right
We
yet.
don't know.
Not
We
right
don't-
yet.
no, Carter. We don't know if he truly died.
Well, not right there. Like later we can talk about that.
Yeah.
So yes, he falls down and is all like, "Ow,
Yeah,
that hurts
ow.
a lot." And then Maggie like steps forward and
Backstabber.
Powell is all like, "You have done well, my child. Now you should birth to my daughter." And it's like, wait, so she's pregnant with his
daughter.
my.
That just took a
Sydney
turn.
thought the twist was going somewhere else with that.
I thought because okay, so there's kind of an awkward confrontation between Carter and Maggie and her father at the beginning, and then throughout the whole movie, Maggie's constantly saying stuff like he has to be here for the birth, and so I thought, and during those scenes, it's when Carter's gone. So I thought the twist was going to be Carter was the father, and then his affair was what broke up their marriage. I'm so happy I was wrong.
Because it's way cooler to be pregnant with your interdimensional dead daughter.
Demon baby.
Yep. So she's smiling, she's having a good time, and then he's like, "Now let it begin." And I think this is the part where we cut back to Kim, who is like scuttling away and hiding for her life in like a vent, and like she's chill for a moment, and then she hears like someone dragging an axe along, and then the dude. Cultist dude steps out and she's like, "Oh shit," and she tries to contact Carter and them, but of course she's only getting static. And then we come back and then it's a bad time because Maggie just like starts screaming and falling away and not having a great time with all of this as the thing erupts out of her and she
Rips her
explodes.
apart.
No,
in blood.
I love that scene
I don't
because
think Maggie
she
made it.
no, she did.
She'll be fine.
No, I did really like that scene though because of course she's all happy, smiles and sunshine. I'm glad this is happening.
And then she's like, "Oh, I regret the decision."
Well, no, because it's the minute he puts his hand on her head and she gets the flash of what's going to happen.
She's like,
Oh, this isn't going to end well.
So yes, and this thing just like steps down with like these big weird claw hands, and it's
You
like
get
massive.
really
Walking on all fours.
You get really grotesque images of her stomach expanding like a bubble.
I want to take this moment to talk about, like, I saw in a few reviews they were questioning this, and it's like, well, how did that make sense? Like, that's obviously not his daughter, so Paul is like an idiot, or
Well,
is
have
he
you
just
seen
being
this
a
guy? He's obviously not all together.
He's not all together, but I'm taking it. I don't think it's just a monster. I think it is his daughter.
It is his daughter, just not
weird, and
yeah.
he's okay with that. It's not like he didn't know this was going to happen. He's
think-
like, "Oh, she's beautiful."
I think like with the blood and stuff. This is my take, and you're not right or wrong. This is art. The thing is, when we
you could
saw
be wrong.
What is art,
when
and
we
can
saw
art
the
be
blood,
judged?
when we saw the blood,
Yes.
she was a vessel. So when she saw the blood, or like when they saw the blood, her baby died. And I'm thinking this is the rebirth of her daughter.
No, he is right that every person,
Because-
every monstrosity you
Yeah.
see comes from a corpse.
Yes. So I'm thinking the baby died and then rebirthed to.
I don't think there was ever a baby in like the traditional sense. I think this pregnancy was planned right away, as Dr. Powell was like, I have picked you to be the harbinger of my daughter."
I think it might not even have been his
Was
kid.
that-
Yeah.
Like,
I
she-
don't.
You're so wrong.
I think
Was
it's
that-
entirely
Prove me
possible.
wrong. Prove me right.
It's entirely possible this was like immaculate conception, but with horrible eldritch demons from the void.
But the important thing is the pregnancy was real. There was
Yeah.
a baby. She was going
See,
in
and this
for
is
her.
where
It just
I-
was this baby.
This is
Yes.
why I always
Was
have
that
problems
the-
with these movies, because like you're not right or wrong.
But at the same time, it doesn't
you
matter
could
if
say
you are.
she had sex with Ronald McDonald.
I
and
could.
just
Yes.
had
That thing was sexy as Ronald McDonald. That was a weird joke. Okay.
Okay.
So, it's a very cool monster, though. Like, I
Oh,
love
yeah.
the design. And,
And,
I like
I-
behind the scenes stuff, seeing the guy, like, moving around in it, it's so creepy.
Oh, yeah, and worth mentioning, almost everything in this movie is practical.
Like, everything they could be practical.
Do you guys think that's like the doctor's pickup line on Maggie? It's like, "Hey there, do you want to be the harbinger?
You want to be the harbinger of the apocalypse?
I'd say yes.
Hey,
I'd be
why
like,
not?
I got nothing else going.
No,
But no.
she grabbed it a little piece of paper on one of those boards, at the
Oh.
library.
Harbinger of doom.
Call 666.
666.
So,
But no, another, like you said, another great monster design. I really love the constant, like visual these monsters have of being attached to their vessel.
Because this thing starts walking
She
and
is
dragging
her along
Maggie by the umbilical cord. And
That
it's so
is
cool.
Rad shit.
That is the best shit. So then it's all like, yes, my beautiful daughter has returned to this realm. And then she gets shot in the face by the son and the father who have returned to save the day. And then they're immediately like, okay, we should probably run.
Yeah, like, we're not fighting this.
They got its attention, so it starts like going, and it's making horrible sounds this entire time. It's awesome.
Those sounds make me uncomfortable.
It starts crawling away, and it's like, well, this isn't good. And so Carter's still laying on the ground right now, dealing with the stab wound. And so we cut to the father and son running away, and at some point the thing like gets on the father and is starting to like tentacly mutilate him, like sticking into his gut.
Yeah, before all that, did you talk about when they shot it?
Yeah.
Like the tentacles came out?
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah,
they shoot it.
I thought it was
because he's like on his back, like struggling with it, and he shoots it, and the jaw like explodes off, and then all the tentacles just go right out of it.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. So it's like pretty much what it's saying is, and what I've gotten out of it was like they can't die.
You know? It's a bad time.
You know?
You're not killing them conventionally.
Yeah.
Well, because they even kind of hinted that slightly when they're fighting the horde of them in the basement. When after a while they stop trying to gun them down and
start
start shooting they start shooting their arms and legs, a la Dead Space.
Yep. And so the father's on the ground. He's getting tentacly penetrated.
Yes.
It's a fun time.
It's very not.
And then in a nice little bit of circular storytelling, he starts throwing himself gasoline onto himself, just like at the start of the movie.
Yep.
Yay.
Just got to imagine I'm wearing a terrible sweater.
You see, it's like poetry.
It's like it rhymes like poetry.
And then he like looks at the son and he's like, "Dad!" And the son's like, "Papa,
Papa.
And then he gets over it and sets him on fire.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
but right before he sets him on fire, right behind the son. Yeah. Who was right behind the son?
the mother. I love that.
Holding the baby.
She's like the creepiest one because she's like always just like
we all brought
half
up the fact
obscured.
that the baby that she keeps holding is the one that died, and that's why he holds the bloody shoe.
That's the shoe.
Yep.
That's the shoe.
And so sets his dad on fire, and then the baby fetus monster is all like as it's on fire. It's obviously not on fire because they didn't have the money. To,
they didn't have the money to do it.
So they
but
put the
it
fire
is
in front
on
of it.
fire.
They're like, we spent hours on that suit.
Please don't set it on
And
fire.
so he continues to run away, and then we cut back to Carter and Powell is doing his thing of us like, oh, I can give you everything. Why? All you have to do is die and give in to the void, my boy.
And also start seeing him like bleeding, like the void's bleeding in.
He's praying.
Reality.
He's praying. Oh crap! We didn't talk about how like the triangle opens out.
Yeah.
He
opened
it.
Yeah.
Pulled back.
It's
And
like
just
beautiful.
this pure blinding
And
white
did you
light.
guys notice like when we looked at the void imagery, we saw the pyramid kind of thing, and it looked like he pushed the pyramid.
Yes. It was
out.
cool.
Like he was getting into a pyramid in a way.
And then, as you say, he was like praying to it, and it was like there's awesome bleeding effect.
that is really
that,
cool.
Like it's super cool.
It's also worth mentioning that every once in a while you get a shot of the outside, and then there's a slight pyramid forming in the clouds. And every time you see it, there's a little bit clearer.
Yeah.
And as Pal is monologuing, Carter asks him a question.
Carter.
I did it again.
Congratulations,
You're not nearly
Liam.
as bad this time. I really wanted to be. Oh,
No,
that's
it's
me to
fine.
Liam. I'll leave the puns to you.
Am I wrong?
I'll leave it to you.
But yeah, he just sinks the axe deep into his shoulder, and he's just like, "Yeah, whatever, dude." And then
Like, whoa.
grabs him and chokes him, and is all like, "You could have had everything." I
Like you just gotta die.
I really wish I remember.
Well,
what
that's
he
the
said.
that's the problem,
But
though.
Carter avoided the answer.
Oh, actually, oh no, he says his quote was he grabs him by the neck and says, "Just let go."
Yes,
let
okay,
go.
thank you, because this was important, like dialogue.
Because
right
like just
But-
die.
That's the problem, though.
Oh, and
is-
then he says, "You guys could be together, and this isn't the end." And he goes, "Yes, it is."
Boom. I'll ask this question. Later, never mind.
shoulder tackles him through the wall, through
And
the
it
pyramid.
closes the portal, and then the whole place starts to shake because that whatever that portal was, and okay, I think it was the portal, but also Powell being gone is like collapsing all of this reality warping weirdness.
The portal and the portal was the gates, and Powell was the key.
So all of these like extended places start like to fade out of existence because they're
they
not
start
real.
to go back where they're supposed to.
And so we cut back to the sun running the fuck away, and this really cool scene that is an homage to Hellraiser as they're running down a hallway, and the hallway's getting thinner, and the monsters behind him like charred and cool looking because it was on fire. And then he just gets out as the thing gets squished.
Squished
Just
into
like
the wall.
Hellraiser.
And then he turns around to the door he jumped through. Door's not there. Just
like Hellraiser.
Just like Hellraiser.
The way they did this was like with the big long stretch of walls, and they had every single cast member, even like the assistant secretaries, like pushing the wall here and there.
Yeah.
It was great.
Oh, I love that. That's
So
such
he
a
gets
good scene.
out, and he's like, "Well, that was a day."
And
so he's
reunites with Kim.
he's stumbling along, and he finds two bodies of the cult members. One of them is axed up, and one of them is like bashed in its face with a fucking fire extinguisher. We skipped a really cool kill when the fetus baby was born. There were cultists in the room when that happened.
Oh yeah, and they all lie down in front of it.
One of them lies down in front of it, and as it like starts to chase after the father and son, it just brings its like massive foot down and like crushes the dude's head, and it just pops.
And
like
I love the
watermelon.
fact that that is the mystery. They didn't humanize those people. Like they didn't like show the faces.
I
of those
would have
people.
hated that if they had just
Yeah.
pulled off
Like,
the hoods
oh
and it was
shit,
all
it
like,
was dude from the
Oh
gas
no!
station.
Yeah, that would have been the worst. Like, oh,
Dave, you should have.
it's father. What's his name? It's
Yeah.
I'm glad that you have no
It's
idea who they
old
are.
lady Smithers.
And because of the fact
Best
that every
cookies.
other character knows everyone else's name, kind of implies it is kind of a small town. That is what would happen. Which would have.
But
sucked.
I still love that that's
You know,
avoided.
there was this one thing we forgot.
What?
The doctor brought up Carter's dad
Again.
and son.
Oh yeah, he said like, "Don't make the same mistake your father did," or at some point, and it was like, okay,
We technically
something
never-
happened.
Yeah, something happened, and guess what? Use your imagination.
Exactly, which
And
I
then-
love.
And then
Put one and one together.
So now we're at the final scene.
Yeah, where he
We're
like
in the void.
follows these bodies. Well, he follows.
Oh.
The son follows the bodies.
Oh,
Opens
okay.
this door. Kim like runs out screaming
Oh,
with an axe, and he's like,
yeah.
"Hold the fuck up!" And then she's like, "Oh my god, you're alive!" And then they all walk off into the sunset together, and it's a good time.
We all
The two
established
youngest
that
characters
Kim
lived.
is like the worst medical student in history, right?
But she was badass. She took on two of the cultists by herself.
Yeah, like she did it, and she. Well, I do like that though, because she didn't want to be working there. She literally says something like, "I'm not even supposed to be working today."
Yeah. I was supposed to be like transferred to wherever.
Yeah.
She could have avoided all of this.
Yeah, and same thing with Carter. He was like 30 minutes away from the ship being rolled
But
over.
we needed.
I
we
wonder
needed
how many-
characters.
How
we needed
hilarious would that have been if, like, the alternate version of this movie where it's just like he drove past just as that guy stumbles out of the trees and was like, "Do I'm gonna go home and have some pizza." I don't know. Have a good
But
time.
what do police officers do?
I don't know.
I don't know.
You know, you saying, one of you guys saying, "I'm not supposed to be here today," made me think of Dante, which made me think of Clerks, which made me think of Void.
Which
plus,
Dante?
From Clerks. You know,
Okay.
I'm not
Dante.
supposed to be here today.
I'll always
Yeah.
think of other Dante first.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean by that.
Yeah.
Inferno.
Yeah. No.
No.
I mean, kind of.
Kind of a little bit.
So yeah, then as Sydney said, we cut back to the void, and fucking Allison is there, looking fine. Like her nurse's uniform is a little messed up, but she's not all tentacly
No.
and gooey. And Powell is gone, nowhere to be seen.
Yeah.
And the two of them just stand there looking on as the pyramid like rises above
They
them.
interlock hands.
Yeah,
Remember?
and then the pyramid.
So this brought them together.
Exactly.
And I do love it because you don't see that right away because you get like frontal shots of them, like from them straight ahead, and you see the background, like the environment they're in, all
it's
these
so cool.
weird tilted pillars, dust storms, blue sky, purple rocks.
And, the best look at the pyramid we've gotten so far. It's just this giant thing floating in the air. We don't know what
impossibly
it is.
big. You get the big blom.
Okay, so
sound.
pretty much this wraps up the movie, and now we get
And
to
it was
talk.
awesome.
And now we get to talk about things that bothered me.
Bro.
No, okay. My one thing, okay, like
You see Skullface McGee? That's gonna be
I'm kind of torn. I'm torn on this because I feel like a part of me, before you jump down my throat, wants a sequel or a prequel to see how it all
They've said they're
happened.
not gonna.
That's the last thing
There's
I
no
want.
there, and honestly, and I'm probably thinking like maybe it doesn't need one because they'll fuck it up. It'll ruin it. Like a lot of the things that were good about the movie is the fact that we don't know. Like so, but there's all these questions, and the beautiful thing about this story is going to be like, what's your thought? Well, your thought's not wrong because we just don't know the answer. Like, what was the void? Like, where was the origin? Other than the fact
It's always been there. There is no origin
It will
because
always be here.
there's no origin because it's always existed.
or
It's
Was
always
it
existed.
created?
It's always existed.
I don't think the movie.
See-
I think the movie is
Okay.
vague on a lot of things, but it's not being vague about the void being like this everlasting thing that has always existed, like apart from our world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
like
see, and I
part
just
of the
like I
elder
guess like
god
when
Right.
I say
and stuff.
what is the void, what part of the void makes it where you cheat death,
That's
you do
pure Lovecrafting.
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
pure
that's
Lovecrafting.
what I'm saying.
It's
That's what I'm
not.
saying.
It's not
Like-
doing this because it wants
Yeah,
to.
it's
It's doing this literally because we're here and it's
Yeah.
passing by.
And that's what I'm saying. It's
It
like,
changes our entire reality just by existing and brushing past.
and I get that.
And I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And where did Pal go? Like, did
That-
he go?
that is a fair- I think that's a fair question.
Did he like go up into the little thing? Oh, and then also
I would like to think he's sitting at the top of the pyramid.
And my,
like,
and my thing is
I
like
think he
Turns
vanishes because, like
into
I
a
said,
final
like
boss.
I said though, the
I-
pyramid like on the wall is the gate. He's the key. Once the gate doesn't exist, the key doesn't exist.
And I feel
That could
like
be.
once you go into the void, and I think that's why I think everyone's dead there. Like I even think Carter died, and the fact is, it's they're in their human body once
the
they're in
knife
void.
wasn't in his back
because
anymore.
because like she was fine, he was fine, and I guarantee like if we did see Powell somewhere, he's probably back to his old self or maybe even a younger self. Maybe they come back as it's endless. That's
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about it. And then of course like mainly what I want, like I don't even care about like what the void is. Don't even mess with this movie again. I want to see the prequel of The Farm. I want to see what went down at the farm.
That just would be a generic horror movie, though.
I want to see it.
Like two dudes stumble into a farmhouse thinking they're going to find cultists,
But
and
how
then they
much?
find way worse shit.
But how? But it could have been a lot more. It could have been a lot more people at that farm.
Well, no, that's another thing I like about this movie because, as far as we know, this was just like the first steps of like whatever the effect the void was having. Like, if this had gone on uninterrupted for like weeks or months, who knows what horrible monstrosities would have like started to like grow out of people.
Oh,
Yeah.
that would be cool.
Exactly, like huge
seeing-
leviathans flying around the
or,
sky and like
seeing eyes on the walls and
Yeah,
stuff
just
open up every time.
the craziest shit you can imagine.
And I will say, in defense of this, the defense of this movie, I feel like a lot of people don't give it a fair shake because they had those same questions. But I like the more I like because I watched the movie and then I went back through the movie and took my notes and going back and I didn't even fully watch it again. I liked it more. It was like because like when I first got done with it, I was like I don't know how to feel about it.
Did you like it more as we talked about it, like sometimes happens with this podcast?
Nah, I kind of feel the same.
Okay.
Like I like not that it's a negative thing. It's more like just reviewing it again. Period. I think if I didn't even review it and just heard it for this podcast, I probably would have liked it more.
Uh-huh.
So, but what we discussed is pretty much what I wrote. So,
I think I started to have more issues with like near the end with the doctor because like he does slowly turn more to a video game.
I was making fun of him the whole time, but personally speaking, I never he was exactly what he needed to be for this movie.
He was what he needed to be, but he was also kind of disappointing. I feel like he should have been a little bit more. He should have looked
Like,
more grotesque.
tentacles growing out of his back.
And
see,
his,
I thought it was perfect.
and the problem was he was the only character that delivered monologues, and as Jesse's performance clearly states, his monologues were super not memorable.
Yeah,
They weren't memorable, but in the moment they
They're
make
f-
sense.
they're
and they
fine.
like give you stuff to think about. I should have written them down, honestly. But
And I'm not saying that like because it's a monologue, it's a long block of text. Like I had to memorize. Hold on, I lost my train of thought. Colonel Jessup's monologue from A Few Good Men, and that took me weeks.
who's
So-
going to protect those walls, Sergeant? You.
Almost. Who's going to stand on that?
Damn
wall,
it.
Sergeant?
so would
I-
you guys would you guys do the same thing? I mean, did you? Okay, like with me, it's different because I'm a father. But like for your daughter, for like someone that died, would you go to extremes?
No.
Okay.
Once they're
Okay.
dead, they're gone.
I would go to John Wick extremes. I would not go to Lovecraft extremes.
That's where I'm at. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
Like I would like
Revenge is fine. Cheating the laws of
Yeah.
nature isn't fine.
Breaking reality and
Yeah.
summoning the eldritch power
and I
of
feel
ancient
like
gods.
even though
That being said,
I wouldn't mind doing both.
I would sell out the human race for cool superpowers.
No, I've always said this. All y'all motherfuckers talking about is zombie apocalypse or Mad Max or like a robot apocalypse. Fuck you. if I want an apocalypse to happen, if I want to survive something, I want to see Lovecraftian shit go down.
Okay.
I want horrors to rise out of the sea, the likes of which I could never fathom.
The closest thing to that we've ever gotten is Gravity Falls.
I know.
It's
It's wonderful.
And it's
That's
great.
the best part.
Ron, fucking watch Gravity Falls.
Thank
It
you.
is it is super up your alley. You'll love
I
it.
know. I'll get to it. Man.
Thank you, Disney.
So I
It's the
don't.
one good thing Disney has done lately.
I don't want to talk like. I don't want to give final thoughts yet. I actually kind of want to talk.
No,
about
let's
Oh,
keep
yeah,
talking.
yeah,
That's
that's what
why.
we're
That's
doing.
why I didn't want
Right,
to jump
okay.
there.
So,
Go ahead.
One of the things I wanted to mention is I love this idea that it's kind of like Sydney knows when I'm going to talk about this. In Bloodborne, there are a lot of dudes who are going through a transformation. Like that's the whole plot
Yes.
of Bloodborne is people are changing into beasts.
Yes.
And the most terrifying part of that is they don't really know it's happening.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
their perceptions have been so warped because of this transformation that like when they're fighting you, they're like, "Get away, beast!"
They think you're the beast.
So that's how like warped they are, and I'd like to think something similar is happening here with the people who are having visions, the monstrosities we saw in the basement, where it's like they know something has happened to them, but they're still probably like they're still in there, if you know what I mean. Like the person they used to be is like still in their head.
What they're
trapped-
seeing probably isn't what we're seeing.
yeah, trapped in this like horrible prison of like stitched together flesh and limbs, and that's just such a terrifying idea to me that I really love.
Yes.
And it's not something that like vampires or zombies will get you. Like you never really have that worry that like the person they used to be is still in there. Whereas with plots like this,
Vampires
the
always know they're vampires, and
Right.
zombies don't really know
it's
anything.
like we have like reality
So
and
they
the
eat
perception is so warped that like Sydney said, they could just be fucking dancing through a daisy field.
Yeah, exactly. Which, fuck, even Gravity Falls does that too.
God damn it!
God damn it!
Let's make this the Gravity Falls podcast.
Oh fuck, I'd do that in a heartbeat.
Tune in next week, audience. We give up this horror shit.
Yeah. For cute Disney cartoon horror shit.
But yes, what I just adore about this movie is that things aren't explained. No one's holding your hand through this. We don't like go to the library and the black triangle, that's a symbol of the void.
You don't look at the church records and find
Yeah,
out.
so-
Wait, this
So if
nun
you guys
habitat
like
burned down years ago.
reveals, which I'm kind of in between it, this movie won't be for you. Like, because there's going to be a lot of like unanswered questions.
I think I talked about this a little bit with like Troll Hunters or one of the movies we did where it's like I really hate that scene in like ghost movies where like they Skype the expert who was like, oh yes, the demon is Azazel. He was jumping into bodies ever since the dawn of time. I hate that.
Find
I'll
the
talk
secret
to you, man.
dagger.
I'm okay with it when it's monsters. I think we talked about this with Troll
Yes.
Hunters because they're like a tangible thing. Like if you could,
There's
if
something
it's
that
real,
exists
if
in
it's
the
a
world.
creature,
Yeah.
you can study it and you can quantify it. So if there's like a research break in movies like that I'm more okay with than when it's like clearly beyond the pale, like ghosts or vampires or that sort of thing. And so in a movie like this, I would especially hate a scene like that. I need a movie like this to be like "Brr, tentacles and we don't know why.
Yeah, exactly.
Like any explanation you could ever give is bad, and that's the problem with like Lovecraft stories that have been like written after his death, and like the people who you can tell kind of don't get it because they try to quantify things and explain everything. Like by now, there's like a whole family tree of Cthulhu, and it's kind of awesome. But I don't want that when I'm reading the story. And I'm glad this movie never delves into that sort of thing of like, this is the void, this is the being that rules over the void, and this is what he thinks and how he works. Like, I would hate that.
Because we got this weird shit that happens. Because, of course, everyone brings up Cthulhu. He's the one that everyone's famous for. But, like, he's the weakest.
He is.
And,
If we want to talk about like Nyarlathotep or Hastur, like these are beings that are like so high above any comprehension we have or understanding of the universe. Whereas Cthulhu, we kind of get his motivations.
and while it's cool that, like, we get those explanations, like, in the long run, it kind of spoils that book.
Right.
Like,
It's cooler when you don't know what they want because you can't know what they want because they don't think the way we do. And that to me is like the void. We don't know why it does what it does or if there is a power, like a sentient power behind it. It might not be a sentient power. It's just a force of nature that does.
And, like, when I've said hundreds of times before that I'm not the biggest fan of horror movies. I've said it dozens of times on this podcast.
Welcome to the horror podcast.
Exactly. That's You Need Me. I would always read cosmic horror because I'm a big sci-fi fan. I've always been a big sci-fi fan. And like I think I've said this earlier on the podcast. I don't remember if it was on the podcast or off mic, but kind of the themes and stuff that like Lovecraftian and cosmic horror, and this movie touched on the vast unknowable of the universe. I think it's great because it can be tackled from a super negative and pessimistic viewpoint, like this movie does. But the exact same themes are tackled in stuff like Star Trek. The infinite void vastness is something to be explored.
And interesting thing, Rick and Morty does the pessimistic impacts on it too. So it's like you get Star Trek, Rick and Morty, and then you get the void.
Well, it depends on your point of view, really. But like, you could look at like if say tomorrow we all find out that we are in a Lovecraftian universe and there are eldritch beings that don't care about us, that could blink us out of existence as easily as they could breathe.
I will buy my trench coat and fedora and revolver right now.
The thing is,
stress would melt away.
Yes, for some people that would be utterly terrifying, but for other people it's like, well, we've had a pretty good run and we have a lot of stuff we could still accomplish. Maybe we could reach those heights one day. Like, just because they're unfathomable and incomparably powerful now doesn't mean they'll always be,
and doesn't mean they always have been.
We humans have the potential to grow, whereas these eldritch things seem to be like static
capped
entities.
out.
Yeah, so there's hope in this hopeless situation, and I like that.
Yeah, no, this was it. I was always the fan because, like I said, I've had friends that look up at the night sky and they'd feel terrified. I love looking up at the night sky. As they say in Gurd Lagann, every one of those lights is an enemy to be conquered.
Just who the hell do you think we are? Yeah.
But like the thing is like, and again, because of course H.P. Lovecraft touches upon this aspect as well.
And racism.
So much racism. Oh man, those books are so good though.
They really are.
But anyway. But because it also goes the other way, like the vastness of the sea and how much we don't even know our own world. Because and I'll admit, because I've talked to people who hate horror movies that don't explain what they're about because there's not enough explanation in our world. But I find in my horror movies and my sci-fi movies, I really like that. Personally,
with so many of the Lovecraft stories I love are the ones that give you like the least amount of information, or like if there is a revelation, it comes like so late that it doesn't even matter.
Okay, anymore. So yeah, because Call of Cthulhu, the story is being told from an interview. Okay, there's the narrator, and then he finds his uncle's notes that he took from an interview.
Other dudes.
Well, he took his notes from the interview someone else took from a sailor who saw it.
And it's just like, I believe it, and because I know this thing exists now,
my life is ruined.
Yeah, like I can't like look at the sun again and feel happiness because I know horror is live
right just beyond it. Jesse and I are going to talk about this forever,
and
we love Lovecraft.
Yeah,
the main reason I got into this is because like I love sci-fi, like so much. Like that sci-fi was like one of the reasons I jumped into horror, because one of my first movies was Alien.
Yeah, that was my first horror movie. Was Alien.
Really?
Yeah.
No way.
Mine was Evil Dead 2.
Oh yeah.
Mine was A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes. My second was Alien.
But like I was a huge Star Wars fan. I played Mass Effect games back to back to back. And
all of these are awesome, by the way, when they get Lovecrafty.
Yeah,
like Mass Effect, best sci-fi Lovecraft I've ever seen. Until the third one, but we'll
anyway,
talk about that later.
We'll talk about that when we turn to a video game.
I can yell about
No. They ruined it before Andromeda.
It's
like, hey, you know these giant, unfathomable machines that have conquered death and time? They're just janitors. They just like rock by the galaxy to be like, okay, y'all, I'm gonna kill y'all now just because.
Which is Lovecraftian.
Well, no, okay, hold on. Have you played Mass Effect?
I played one.
Okay, so
I had enough fun. I don't want to go to the rest of them.
So the cycle of it is how
dare you?
The reason, 2 is one of the greatest games of all time. But the cycle of how they explain it is the Reapers for the first 2 games are these vast unknowable things.
Anyway, sorry. I don't mean to get on this, but we are diverging quite a bit.
I know, but it's kind of.
I know it is. But
we'll talk about
we'll have an entire Lovecraft podcast.
The Lovecraft podcast will be one of our other podcasts, like We Scream at Jesse About Star Wars podcast and the SCP podcast.
Oh God,
we will have those eventually.
I'm so excited. SCP is Lovecraftian.
Oh, kind of is, kind of isn't. Depends on which one you're reading. But anyway. Let's go ahead and get to our ratings right now.
How much time have we done?
About 136.
Okay. Yeah, so we're reaching that point.
Do you know what we just did?
Huh?
We just announced a podcast cinematic universe.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm happy.
That was the plan from the beginning.
Yes. Jesse and I were talking about the SCP podcast the first day.
Well, I was talking about Ron, like when we were first talking about this idea that we could talk about basically whatever at some point.
Well, we'll eventually get to our action movie podcast.
Yes.
Anyway, so
who's down for the Stallone podcast?
Jesse, Jesse suggested
starts
the movie,
'cause
so
this
he'll
is-
start off
yeah.
the ratings.
Well, I think I pretty much like voiced the reasons why I love this because of the type of horror I get into.
Yes.
I like, as I said this before, I like to compare these things to other things in the genre. And the only Lovecraft movies I could think of are Dagon, In the Mouths of Madness, and The Prince of Darkness. And actually, two of those are really good competition for this movie.
Isn't there one with the Shimagoroth in it, and it's the worst looking Shimagoroth in the
It's
world?
fucking stupid.
Was
But,
it the Relic?
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. No, the Relic was good.
Was
I
it
like
good?
the Relic.
No, Relic's something else. Anyway, sorry.
So yeah, I would actually not hold this as like the number one Lovecraft movie that exists, but in terms of certain aspects, it's way up there in like
I
what
have
it
to ask you,
portrays.
what's your number one?
In the Mouth of Madness, probably.
Okay.
It's got Sam Neill.
Yeah, I
It's
can
got-
see that.
It's awesome.
I can see
All right.
that. It's the most pure.
It is. But I still think it is a worthy member of the pantheon of things that have tried to give us Lovecraft because so few things do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my favorite type of horror, and I'm like, I don't want zombies. I want horrible monstrosities I don't even understand.
Yeah, but you can't sell those.
I know. But, so I would definitely say there are so many things I love about this movie. Any complaint I have is like super minor in the face of things, so I give it an 8. And I would say definitely recommend to any fan of horror. Any fan of practical effects, this is
Oh,
a
yeah.
must
Yeah,
watch.
Must watch.
Even at the very end, when they're looking at the thing, that scene probably is CGI. It looks like an old-fashioned matte painting, and I love it.
Any fan of John Carpenter, watch this. Like I mentioned earlier, how it's like a mesh of Precinct 13 and The Thing. That's really how I kind of quantify this movie in my head.
Or if you like the first two Hellraisers.
Yes. But yes, watch it. It's an awesome movie.
Liam.
Hello. Okay, so to bounce off of Jesse's idea about the two John Carpenter movies, I actually think of it more like Prince of Darkness and The Thing.
Spoilers. I'll talk about it later. But yes, very Prince of Darkness, especially the ending.
Mhm.
Oh yeah. But like, you know, this is one of my first Lovecraftian horror movies I've seen. Because, like, you know, the closest thing I got to it was Mass Effect, Rick and Morty, and Star Trek, you know. But it's such a good movie. I've seen this, like, 4 times now. Probably plan on seeing it a few more times. Probably not anytime soon right now. Because, you know, 4 times can do that to a person. But I would definitely give this 8 out of 10. And talking about this just makes me more interested. All right, and I'll pass it off to Ron.
Okay. After I was done watching this last night, well, this morning.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah, because I watched it from 3 in the morning to 4:30. So this morning, I was sitting there thinking, like, do I like this movie? Because I'm one of those people, like, I do like the unknown, but at the same time, I do like the known. I was kind of just like sitting there, and I was thinking I'd probably put this at a 6, just because of just where I was unsure. But after reviewing everything and doing everything, I'm going to put it at a 7.
Okay.
Because it's
All right,
definitely
that's better.
Yeah, it is better.
I was about to be heartbroken because I was
no,
like, yeah, we're going to find one Rod doesn't like.
Oh,
I
no,
didn't
it's
think
what
it'd be
I love.
this one.
No. And the thing was, no, with this, I feel like a 7's good. It's definitely one of those movies that I probably will watch again and again and again. And I'll probably raise my rating up the road. But as of now, I'm keeping it at a 7. On to Sid.
I really like this movie. It's one of it strikes that perfect balance that I want a horror movie to be, where it does kind of have those deeper themes, but at the same time can be enjoyed like in like a party setting. I guess what I mean is this is a movie you could watch by yourself or with a group of friends or whatever. We just went on and on and on about how we feel about Lovecraftian stuff, so I don't feel like I need to say much more. I'm definitely going to watch this movie again later on down the road. This is going to be one of those movies that like my brother watches less movies than me, especially horror movies. This is going to be one of those movies where I sit down with him and be like, all right, you're going to watch this with me. 8 out of 10, maybe even leaning towards a 9. I like this movie a lot.
I have a little thing to interject that we should probably do because we haven't really talked about it on the previous episodes. Should we talk about if it actually scared us or not? We haven't really mentioned that.
That'd be interesting.
All right.
Yeah, shit, fuck.
It scared me. Like the creepy cultist dudes out in the darkness. I don't like creepy dudes out in the darkness. Like
Oh, sorry.
I don't like the existential horror of horrible shub yog sathos running around. It's a bad time. So I was scared at a few points.
This actually scared me because like I was watching it with like stereo headsets on and
I'd do
like
it.
1 o'clock in the like night with all the lights out. Yeah, it definitely scared me, especially with the creepy dudes in the forest.
I wasn't really scared much, but I felt very eerie with the robe.
The atmosphere is very good.
Well, the cult things, like kind of like how I said, I don't want to see them because they would have humanized them. Them not doing that really creeped me out because it's like what? Why are you there? Why you just stand there? Why are you like this?
They might not even be human.
Yeah,
you take those masks off and they're probably like.
They're probably.
I kind of want to see more with the cult. Actually, that is one nitpick I have. Those designs were so cool. I wanted to see more.
I feel like a prequel would.
I don't want a prequel. I don't want a sequel. What I want is an art book.
Ooh.
I want an art book.
I've seen a bit of the art of this movie. It's so good.
Yeah, I want an art book, and I want an art book with maybe a few pages from like the doctor's journal. I think that'd be the best way to go with it.
Okay, it's weird tangent. I always love shit like that in movies. Whenever there's like a journal like describing these things, I'm always like, I want to read that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know what they're saying.
But like how you were saying, like, does this movie scare me? Movies that like honestly creep me out. Like, I love horror movie. Like, and I think the scares are great, but what gets me is if it deals with kids or religion.
And those are the
main ones.
There's a whole subplot and theming around losing your child, especially in the womb. So, how you doing, Ron?
So Sydney.
Did you just say I should die?
No. I'm asking if that actually bothered you, since so much of the story revolved around specifically children dying in the womb.
Yeah.
There's lots of dead kids in general, but
yeah, I think it's a traumatic experience for a parent to lose their kid. But I always said this, like, for personally me, if my kid was ever going to die, that would probably be the only way. Because I don't want to meet the kid and like have a relationship and then. But this is getting on a dark.
I was going to say I'm sad now.
Yeah.
Sydney, did it scare you?
No, this movie didn't scare me at all. It was fucking rad.
It was rad too.
But like I said though, like I love the infinite cosmic unknowable of the universe, but it doesn't really frighten me to the extent that it does other people. I'm fascinated by it. I want to learn more. I unfortunately might be the cult leader who joins up with it.
You get to break the seals of reality and kill us all.
Yeah, but the thing is I think looking back at it, it wouldn't necessarily be for reasons that you normally see stories.
It'd be for the laws.
It'd be really petty shit. Like, look at that cool thing.
How would you
it's so
feel
rad.
If, like, the gods were very like tricksters and they brought copies of Muckman 2? Electric.
That's the problem.
Apocalypse.
No, but I mean, like, it didn't really scare me per se. I thought the cultists were creepy. And, like, there's certain things, like, I didn't realize the cult was in the woods, that cultist was in the woods at the very beginning. I didn't see that scene. And, like, so not knowing that right away, like, looking back, I'm like, oh, what else did I miss? I find stuff like that kind of scary. But, no, I didn't find this movie scary at all.
In that case, I think it's
probably a reason why it got such a high rating from me.
In that case, I think it's time to wrap up.
Yes. Well,
with your stuff.
Of course, yeah. I was about to.
We have a Twitter now.
We have a Twitter now. We have a Facebook now. That's Mike in the Asylum at both of those. Or what's the @ on the Twitter? I don't remember.
Twitter said Mike MIC and Asylum.
Yes.
So that's the way it regenerated.
Tweet us if you have stuff to say.
Yeah, and then of course our email is Mike. Go ahead.
Oh, what was it again?
Mike in the Asylum 4, the number 4, at gmail.com. If you have any questions, you can hit us on social media, email, or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think getting into the next week's movie.
Yes. So this week, it's my turn to pick a movie.
Yay!
Oh wait.
We're gonna pick a movie that's very, very, very near and dear to my heart. It is something that I wanted to watch and have a nice round table about before I leave for my little hiatus. Although I'm not even sure that the audience is going to notice.
I hope not.
So, next week we are going to be watching one of my favorite movies of all time, Evil Dead 2.
Yes!
Groovy. The only reason I'm saying is because I wanted to pick it one day.
And for our listeners out there, Evil Dead 2 is pretty much a remake of Evil Dead 1, so you don't even have to watch 1. Would you say that?
Legal. No,
It's
I
a
wouldn't say
murky issue.
It's
the first
It is
10
very-
minutes are a remake.
Okay.
So I'm going to kind of bring up a little bit of a spoiler for Ash versus the Evil Dead, because they do actually
They
touch on
address
this.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like spoilers.
It's
man.
not even a big spoiler.
Okay, go
Basically, there's a scene where they have to go back to the cabin for whatever reason,
Okay.
and they have to find the book again. And then Ash goes, "All right, so when I last saw the book, I left it here.
Found it.
It was
Found it.
it was on the desk, or was it in the basement? I don't remember. It's great.
Nice.
So
Okay.
no, it's murky, even though they are both technically canon.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Now that I think about it, yeah. So if you have time, watch both. You know?
I'm gonna
Dude,
talk
both
for
of-
so long
both
next
of them are
episode.
And
so
honestly, if you even have even more time, watch Army of Darkness because
And
we
Ash
might,
versus
we might,
the
we
Evil
might, we might.
Ash
tap
vs.
on that
Evil
a
Dead
little,
is
too.
so good.
We are basically probably going to go over the whole series as time goes on.
You know, I'm fully prepared. Hell, I'll even finish the PlayStation 2 game I have right there.
We'll talk about the musical.
It's so good because
All
like
right.
Ted Raimi is a voice actor too, and he says like some of the most hilarious
Evil
stuff
Dead
in the
anime.
game. Dude,
okay,
I
was
would
being
watch.
serious.
I would
don't
watch
think
the
that exists.
hell out of that.
There's a
anime.
musical though.
There's a
There's
supernatural
music-
anime.
There's a musical, and then